Hi, hello. We are live. As you can see, everyone. Well, firstly, I'm going to ask the usual, can you hear me? I'm going to assume that you can because I've been talking to Sal and he can hear me, but I'm going to ask you anyway. So I'm here with Sal from Comicpop, who has been good enough to join me so that we can chat all things comics. So thank you so much for taking some time and for coming at such a late time. I'm sure many of you know Sal, but he has a wonderful channel, more than one, and he does interviews on Comicpop Returns, live streams. You cover all kinds of obscure and some of the past comic stories, which I absolutely love when going through all of those. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for being for having me. It's been usually I'm the one who says thanks for being here, so that's why I got tripped
I
up.
know
But
you
thank
started to
you.
like go.
I did. I went right into like work mode. But no, I'm so grateful to get a chance to be here and be part of this great show. I do occasionally bomb in, but I don't like to go in the chat and go like, "Hey, I'm watching the show too," because I find that people go like Sal, and then I'm like, "No, don't pull focus. The show is like this is the show." But
No,
I
I've
do
dropped
check
into
this
some
out.
of your lives. I do the same thing though. I'm like, I'm just a lurker. Like no one knows.
Exactly. No, there's so much. I mean, lurking is it's an undisputed art. Like it is definitely a, you learn a lot and you become a fan as a result. Like certainly, I'm a big admirer of your work, and I really appreciate you giving me a chance to come on here and just chat comics for a little while. It's been really fun. We've been talking off mic for like a few minutes now, so
Yes.
it's like I'm an old friend now. Like
I always love to take the time to chat a little bit beforehand if possible because it helps you get into like the flow. You do lots of interviews as well, so I'm sure
yes.
you know the difference between when there's no time and it's just like, "Oh shoot, got to jump right into it," versus actually getting a chance to like, unwind and relax with a
I try
person.
very hard never to just jump in anymore. And nowadays I try very hard not to do like live interviews because
Mhm.
I just I don't know. I want to make the guest that much more comfortable where they're like I could just it's all because of Tom King. Tom King screwed everything up for me. And I say that with love and affection in my heart because he's a great person and a fun person to know. But like we did this show and
Mhm.
we talked about stuff and I guess it was just very that was not live, by the way. That was just me
Mhm.
screwing up. But God knows what could happen if it were live. That was when it was recorded. Where we were talking and somebody, and I can't say who, maybe it was
Mhm.
him, but mentioned something about somebody directing a movie that's coming out this year or next year, and that
Mhm.
had not been announced yet. And then a couple of trades picked it up, and I was like,
Oh no.
yeah, I was just like DMing. I'm like, hey Tom, should I take this down? He goes, let me check. Yeah, you should probably take it down. So I pulled it, but it was already the damage was done. But yeah, so
I'm
ever since then,
so
I'm like, we don't do that.
I'm so paranoid because like sometimes I'll cut things that probably don't even need to be cut because I'm just like,
Yeah,
what if, you
yeah,
know?
exactly. No, and I'll check and recheck like when the show's over. I'm like, how was that? Is there anything you want me to get out? They're like, no, I think everything was okay. I'm like, well, I'll be sure to check. And then it's been very rare now, so I try to
Mhm.
steer that around where I'm like, no, we're not talking about that. But it's yeah, it's a dicey world. Doing the interview and making your living essentially broadcasting. Because like
Mhm.
everything you're doing is going to go in and out, and so thinking about what you're going to take out is like the last thing on your mind, or certainly the
Mhm.
last thing you want to think about is like I'm going to remove this really fun element that might be potentially a big deal for the audience, but nah.
I know, like, I'm an editor by trade, so, like, I'm just obsessively watching things over and over again, so I'm just
Yeah.
like, frame by frame, and so it's like, people ask me, they're like, "Are the interviews easier to edit?" I'm like, "They should be, but not the way I do them."
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. I didn't know you were an editor by trade. What did you professionally, or did you like as a
Yeah,
like a
yeah,
freelance? Like
I've done it all, like, I started off in the wedding world. I edited
mhm.
weddings, then I did some corporate stuff, some, like, small documentaries, all kinds of things before I phased into the new media landscape, so, like, I can't
Yes.
imagine a world where I didn't edit in some capacity, in
That's so
some way.
funny. Well, I got to start doing this editing as well, not
Mhm,
professionally, but it was more just entirely like personally, just fun.
mhm,
I got into editing just because my college offered like
mhm,
programs. It was before the ubiquitous opportunities that were available to us.
mhm.
I don't think that I had access. I didn't have a Mac, so I didn't even have access to iMovie. But I found myself like just playing with editing at my
Mhm.
college, like on like an editing bay, and I
Yeah.
realized like I looked up and it was 7 hours, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I guess I like doing this.
Yeah. No, I love it. Like, I have a whole and it's not hidden because I have no shame. I have an original channel under my name where I used to make music videos, like animated music videos
Oh,
back in
that's
high
great.
school
That's
and stuff. I'm
awesome.
like, I love doing that stuff.
That's awesome.
Insane Howl Cow, thank you very much. Says two legends together. And thank you for gifting memberships to everyone. That's so lovely. And
Wow.
if you get those, you can go and vote in the book club. So we're doing the book club again next week. And so far, Gotham City Sirens Volume 1 is winning. So I don't know why you'd want to change that, but if you
I don't.
did, you could
Yeah.
go and vote.
Yeah, you could add to the
Yeah, you can add to
populace
the
that
momentum.
demands that, right?
Psycho Jet Black, thank you very much. Says, will Disney/Sony ever do a Clone Saga movie? Do you want them to? Is that why you're
Right?
asking, Psycho Jet
Is that
Black?
something? I mean, honestly, they kind of have, haven't they? Ben Reilly is a character in the
He is.
Spider-Verse movies. Like they've, as far as you're concerned, like they made one already. It just hasn't been shown to you. But if Ben exists in those movies, they did it
It's
already.
somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, and the Spider-Man cartoon show that everyone, like the second X-Men '97 came out, and
Mhm.
the audience went, Spider-Man '97 when?
They're like Spider-Man
And
98, they're like, "We need this," and then they had the one bit of, like, Peter and MJ at the end, they're like,
oh,
"That's not enough.
right.
We need
And I'm
more."
like, dude, it's an X-Men cartoon. The fact that they're in it is kind of remarkable, but it's a good tease. And it's
Mhm.
definitely, I can imagine like the creators at X-Men '97 going like, I mean, look, if you want us to make it, like we'll do it. We already have the models for Pete and MJ. It's not hard to make a Green Goblin. But if that exists and could make more, there's a Clone Saga on that one too. So
Mhm,
like
there is, and
there's a
actually, I don't mind their little stab at the Clone Saga that they did at the end there. It's not bad, for
oh
trying to
no,
condense everything in there. Same with Secret
well,
Wars, honestly.
oh my god, that Secret Wars thing, that was such an epic and so unexpected. Like you're watching the
Mhm.
show, and especially if you're just like as a kid just watching it, not knowing anything about
Yeah.
what they're teasing, and then suddenly one day they're like, "Oh yeah, Battle World. Here's Doctor Doom." It's
Mhm.
like, "Whoa!" Like, awesome. Yeah. It isn't until like 20 years later you find out like, oh, the Storm voice actress was the only American from the X-Men cartoon show, and so as a result, that was the only X-Man that was ever going to be flirted with, put into Secret Wars. And so as a result, like, as a fan, you're just like, oh my god, who's
It's
he gonna
Storm.
pick? Is it gonna be Wolverine? Oh, Storm's cool, that's great. And it's like it was always gonna be Storm. It was never gonna be anybody else. Uh, we couldn't get anybody from the Fantastic Four cartoon, so here's some new people. Like, oh man. Back then, all you care about is just seeing them all on the same screen. It's like that's awesome to me. I don't
Mhm.
care. Yeah, man. Remember those days? Remember when people were just like, "Look at those! They're all on the same screen. That's cool." As opposed to, "Oh man, it's
I
those
know.
two on screen." Like, I was kind of hoping for so and so. Of
We're
course,
very spoiled for choice these
we are.
days.
But I will admit I am
Mhm.
spoiled, but only consistently. Where every time, as a kid, I'd be like, "Oh man, how come Spider-Man couldn't be in this?" And that's just
Mhm.
what I say every time I watch a Marvel project. I'm like, "Oh man, couldn't Spider-Man be in this one too?" And they're like, "We wanted him to. Trust me. We like money."
I know,
All
it's like,
right.
if we could, we would.
Yeah, yeah. Like that. I swear, they put it in there on purpose. There's a sequence
Mhm.
in Falcon Winter Soldier when they're in New York City, and one of them, I don't remember if it's Bucky or Sam, like look up at the New York skyline from the ground, look up at nothing
Mhm.
for like 2 whole seconds. I'm like, you put that shot in there in case they were like, we could CG Spider-Man swinging ball. Like,
It's
I
like, if we
know
get the
you did
yes.
that. Yeah, if we get the yes, it's going in. Like we have it already animated. We did it on spec. We paid for it ourselves, but it's there in case we get the green light. No, damn it. All right, it's going to
It's like,
air.
keep that scene in the it's like,
Yeah,
we
that's
can't cut it, it'd
me.
be too awkward.
I'm like, please put it in. But yeah, I know that they agree with me.
Unfazant 11, thank you very much. 2 channels I've watched for a while. Well, thank you very much for watching. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm not
So
getting a cut for this, but I do appreciate it.
So I'm sure, like me, you've been reading a lot of comics. So what have you been reading? What are
Oh
you
my
keeping
god.
up with?
Yeah, it's interesting because like I have this fun comic book review show. This is the part where I
Mhm.
shill with my beautiful wife Tiffany, where we talk about comic books every week on
Linked
Mondays.
below.
Links below. Thank you very much. Hey, there we go. That's a pro right there, folks. But you'd think I'd read everything because I have a responsibility to do it, but I will just go, I'm not gonna, like, I'm not gonna, like, just no. But I am reading a lot more than certainly than I did as a kid, like, because you know now one of the big two sends me the books, so I could read, I could read literally any of DC books as I want, and even then sometimes I'm like, nah. But I read quite a bit. But I'm thrilled with. I am late to the party. Like, I haven't read everything coming out or that has come out this week, but I've read a few things. Like, I've picked up a couple things. I had to read Ultimate Spider-Man. That was like my first thing I had to read from this week, which was great, even though the cover is a big lie, just bold-faced lie, like the previous one. Like, hey, Black Cat. I'm like, all right, sounds great. That'll be cool. I'd love to see the dynamic. They're like, nope. And then in the next one, literally somebody's like, this is Black Cat. She will be in the book someday. And then that's the end of it. And I'm like,
I was tricked.
Again. Yeah, you tricked me again. But I will read an issue or 10 of Uncle Ben and J. Jonah Jameson, like, talking.
That dynamic is very fun. I really enjoy.
Fun. Yeah. And like, I'm kind of a sucker for like a business build story. So, the time jumps are great, but also I'm kind of like, but I would love to see like a 6-issue mini of just like, how did Jonah and Ben create the paper? Like, how do they pay their employees? What are their health plans looking like? What's their release agreement? I'm really interested in all that stuff, but it's still fun. Like, even if I don't get all those really cool Spider-Man moments.
Well, it's like, that's when you have to take the moment to realize it's like, I'm probably a very niche demographic for that. It's like, there are dozens of us who would want this.
Dozens, I tell you. No, definitely. Well, and I think that we're getting a lot of new converts every day. Like, every day that another issue of Ultimate Spider-Man comes out, because I want to say Spider-Man like swings a punch maybe in 3 issues out of 11. So they're just, but yet it's always like the number one book. So I'm kind of like, look, they're reading. Okay. So I feel like at some point or another, we're going to get to a point where the audience is going to go to like, where Hickman's going to be comfortable enough to go, it's going to be Spider-Man action every week. And people are going to go,
this is what you were waiting for.
Yeah. And people are going to be nostalgic for like, whoa, where are the old men sitting on a bench talking about how things work? This isn't the Spider-Man I know.
Hashtag not my Spider-Man.
Yeah. Hashtag not my Spider-Man. Where are the boring conversations? Where's the dinner dates? There's a whole episode, there's a whole issue where Gwen and Harry go out with Pete and MJ, and I'm like, this is what I'm here for.
I remember some people weren't all on board for that because they're like, this is boring. I'm like, but the emotional drama and tension as they contrast the two's relationships to each other throughout the dinner.
It's delicious. It's as delicious as what they're eating, probably. But no, I'm there for that. That's the kind of thing where, like, I will, if I go back and read old books, and which of course I want to do, I'll pick up, I'll see this fun, spectacular action sequence, with Hydro Man, and I'm like, that's fun looking. But really, then you get into it, and I'm like, oh no, but what's going to happen with Flash? Like, he's with Black Cat, but she wants to be with Peter. Like, I'm a real sucker for that kind of stuff, especially if I know those characters. You can't just, burgeoning independent comic book creators out there, you can't just lead with the melodrama. You have to make me care about these characters first. But once you do, then you can get away with. I mean, look at Saga. Whole issues of just people being sad and nothing happened. My wife's gonna be really mad at me for saying that. I'm kidding. Saga's an amazing book with fantastic art and writing. That a lot of stuff happens in that book.
I've been reading a lot on the indie scene. Like a lot. Just I really all in on Global Comics. Like, I really enjoy that app a lot. And I've been fortunate enough to work with them. I'm like, this was very serendipitous because I really love the app. So I'm like, this is fantastic.
How do you like it? Like, the app's working well? Like, it's a good functioning app. Does they have like really a guided view kind of thing?
It's like, for the ones that offer it, like the panel to panel, you can do that. You can pull up all the pages on certain ones. You can add it to your library so you can come back and read it later. You can like do a kind of download offline mode type thing for some of them, which is nice. Nice. Some of the indie works, they come out a bit earlier than their physical release, like Mugshots. So like, I was finishing off Mugshots just last night. I was like, ooh, I should talk about Mugshots. I'm not sure many people are reading it, but then I saw it wasn't even physically out yet. I'm like, ooh, I didn't even know I was early. Like, I feel special now.
Yeah, that's Mad Cave, right?
Yes, it is.
Nice. Yeah, I every
Yeah.
time I see a Mad Cave book, I'm like, these guys are really doing some good work. One day I will sit down and actually read your catalog, but for now, I gotta get this I gotta get this episode out. Just constantly like, yeah, I'm always underwater with work and reading
I
and
was just gonna
juggling that.
say, do you always feel slightly behind?
Yeah, I'm never not behind. That's my secret. Looks like I'm on time, but really, no. When we get we'll do like an episode, or we'll get like a bonus one, and we'll like everyone will be like, "That was great, we did it." And I'm like, "Yeah," and I'm just thinking like, but we could have used another 3 episodes. Like we could have spent another 9 hours and just really getting this thing home, and then maybe I could take a week off. But in the meantime, no. No. But I'm glad that the Global Comics app is working out, and I love that it's like, inadvertently a mecca for independent comic book creation. Like it's just kind of like here's everybody else as far as like, what's coming out and getting it in the hands of those who need it.
It's really cool for the webcomic scene too.
Yeah.
Which is, really neat as well.
Do
And
they
because of that, you get to see some people in like the global space too, which is cool.
really? So it's like
Mhm.
you could have like non-English like language comics through it as well.
Well, not so much, but more just like companies from outside. Like I've seen like some of the
Oh,
like Nigerian comic companies and stuff like that, and I'm like, that's really
interesting.
cool. So
Yeah, that's really neat. Oh yeah, I'm glad that it's funny, like indie comics are such a they've always been a niche thing, and they've always been kind of just like fighting. Like
Mhm,
since I've started reading comics as a kid, like I remember my YouTube back then was
mhm.
Wizard Magazine, and never had I seen more proliferate independent comics than at that time,
Yeah.
where I was just bombarded. And it had to do with 2 things. One, the reading habits of the staff, which is
Mhm.
literally like our world. Like you hear about books you've never heard about because of personalities like you and anyone else out there who like has a following and has like some kind of interest in this world. But back then it was just like, I really like Concrete or Scud the Disposable Assassin. I want to get
Mhm.
that out there. But also advertising, just seeing just full
Mhm.
page ads for books. I was looking through an old magazine recently, and I remarked on how every issue has at least 2 ads for books that were clearly self-published. Like
Mhm.
clearly somebody was like, I'm going to buy a full page ad in Wizard. And because I saw that like 25 years ago, I remember it fondly, but
Yeah.
only because of the ad. Like there was no way any comic shop within 100-mile radius of me had that book.
Mhm.
That's true indie comics. And I always wonder what they're doing now. I'm like, did they do it? Did they achieve their dreams? Look at the name. No.
Yeah.
All right.
No, there's
But
so
yeah.
much like interesting history there. And I feel like we're going to see a lot of that emerge in like the webcomic space and stuff too, which I think is going to be really neat to see how all of that evolves and overlaps because everything is growing and changing. And it's just really cool to
Oh,
witness.
absolutely. Big time.
Psycho Jet Black, thank you very much. Who does better physical omnibuses, Marvel or DC? Like, do you mean like opening them, like holding them in your hands, or like do you mean like
Like
collecting, like what's
printing?
collected
Yeah,
inside of them?
we'll have to get Omar over here because he's the omnibus guy. I don't know, man. I don't read a lot of omnibuses unless they're the Marvel versus DC omnibus that came out recently. I was like, that's
Mhm.
mine. I have to have that. But it's not open. It's sealed. Like it's just sitting sealed because I just can't believe it exists. But I don't read a lot of omnibuses, mostly because they're not they're flimsy, but it's it's like 100 pounds of pages
They
just
are
gently
heavy.
bound, like it's heavy, and I'm really worried that like they'll separate. Like I remember as a kid going to the library. These library folks
Mhm.
used to be this building where they kept all these books. Printed the internet and put them in books and put them in a library. This building everyone could access, but only during ridiculous hours during the day. But anyway, you'd open up and you hear this awful sound where that's just the spine breaking from 1,000 people having that thing. And every time I pick up an omnibus, I think of like an old book, and I'm like, no, this thing was like $112.
You gotta rewatch Omar's video about how to open it. There's a trick
Yes,
to it.
that's true. Yeah, and that's the thing is, I didn't see it, but I know that video exists because I remember seeing it in my feed, and I was like, I need to watch this because
There's a trick to it to like help the spine not just collapse in on itself.
I hope it's not like I have to like make sure I put Vaseline on the spine itself, or like wear special gloves, or go into a 0G environment. You can only read your omnibuses in one of those like vomit comet like planes. But yeah,
like collection wise, I think both of them are doing pretty well right now. I think it's a really great era if you're into collecting omnis, because so much stuff is being reprinted as well. And there's lots of really cool stuff with like the not omnis so much, but the compendiums and the soft covers with like DC's finest and those kind of things. And they're collecting all that old stuff. So I'm like, I think that stuff's really cool and really great.
I agree.
And the soft covers are a bit less. They're a bit easier to read because I love omnis, but it's like when it is time to read them, it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to go like find a nice flat surface, like put it like down and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can't like pick it up like I'm, the elder statesman of a family and I'm about to read like in front of a fire. I have to go to like I gotta get a table. Yeah, this is what I was worried about. Yeah, I gotta get a table. I gotta make sure it's all.
It's kind of like textbook style reading a little bit. Like you can't get fully as comfortable unless you're gonna get somewhere like on a bed flat in your stomach or something like that, because otherwise it's kind of cumbersome to hold it up. So
that is certainly how I used to read them. I would read them like I was like a teenage girl waiting for her beau to call on a bed with like my fuzzy slippers, like just being like, oh boy, here's the next comic book, just flipping the pages. So I'm very much at home with that thing. So. But I'm sorry I couldn't answer that question.
RLC Comics, thank you very much. Which comics do you revisit when you need a good cry? So when you want to be sad, when you want to feel the sadness.
Right? I'm very curious about that answer for you, because I'll have to think about that. It's pretty easy to find a comic that makes me cry at this point. But yeah, I don't know.
That's hard for me because I'm the type of person, whenever somebody asks me a direct question like that, like everything leaves my brain. I'm like, I read comics, like,
yeah. Like,
I know comic, but like, so it instantly blanks. And I'm like, I know I've cried reading a comic before, but of course now I'm just completely blanking on like when that would be, because I'm just thinking of the last time I cried with an entertainment thing, and that was the Wild Robot. So I'm like, that was the last time I
cried. I know it's funny. My answer isn't the comic book that makes me cry when I read it, but I remember as a kid I picked up a copy. I want to say it was like when it came out, there was Spectacular Spider-Man 200 alongside Amazing Spider-Man 375, or around the same like season. I remember it was in like a special cardboard display case, and I was like, oh, they both have holographic covers. One was a book about Spider-Man's artificial parents being kidnapped by Venom, and the two of them kicking ass, and then eventually dovetailing into a Venom miniseries. And the other one was like the culmination of J.M.D. Mateus's psychodrama about the dissolution of a friendship and then the death of like a loved one. And I'm like, well, very different reading experiences, but Spectacular 200, I remember like I read it a lot because back in the day, like you'd go to the comic book store like because someone else took you there, and then all you had was those books and you just read them over and over again. So I knew them like the back of my hand, but I was always just like, oh, that's sad. But then I remember explaining to my wife what happened in that issue, and I started to cry, and I'm like, what's happening to me? What is this salty discharge? But I was like, this is really like fundamental. And then I looked over it and I'm like thinking about the panel composition and how like the last page or two has no dialogue, no sound effects in it. And I'm like, okay, there a lot of craftsmanship went into this book. So my answer is 200, even though the book didn't make me cry reading it. It's more like describing it to other people makes me cry.
It makes you realize that left an impact, like an impression on you.
Exactly. Yeah. But there's so many now. And then like I'll, like reading Bone again. I'm like, oh, there they go. Leaving the valley. But yeah, that's a good one for me.
Brian Harry is asking, favorite Ghost Machine book so far. Are you keeping up with Ghost Machine?
No. Just flat out no. I can't fake it. I read at least 4 of the Ghost Machine books when they all debuted. I was like, I'm reading Rook and Redcoat and all these things. And then I just didn't anymore. Like I just straight out, I saw like Rook was at issue 3 and I went, I don't know. Like,
it's too late now.
It's too late now. I'm too far gone. But I think I dug the hell out of Rook. I just thought it was a neat idea, and of course, I think that's Fabok, and I'm like, this looks really good.
No, it's a gorgeous book. Like Brian, I am keeping up with them, so I can answer. I really liked Rook a lot, but I like Hyde Street as well, just because I'm a fan of horror anthology type things. So even though that's
Mm,
only one issue and one side story in with Devour, like I really enjoyed that. And I really liked The Rockefellers, which is the one that just came out this week by Pierre Tomasi and Francis Manipul. It was actually one of the ones I put like a picture for like best of the week. Is like I really enjoyed reading it. I did an interview with Francis. I managed to get up the day of, and I was like, yes, timing. But but it's like it's going to be a builder. It's not one of those first issues where it has like a big giant bombastic type thing, but it's one of those things you can tell the story's kind of grow, like going to grow
yeah,
in itself, and I'm like, ooh, like it's going to be a journey, and that's going to be fun. So
nice. I didn't even hear about that one. I think I saw it from your thumbnail. I was like, uh-oh. She's gonna ask me about this, and I don't know what the hell it is. But yeah, that's the thing, folks. Collaboration will make you humble. I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't know why I missed
well,
that.
there's so much out there. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm always hearing about new stuff. It's like, did you like hear the thing? And I'm like, sometimes the answer to that is yes, and sometimes it's like no.
Yeah. Oh, there are some times where I'm like, I've been anticipating a book for like weeks, and then the week that we're talking about books, that one came out, and I'm like, wait, we missed it. You know, I'm always making sure I'm on top of a lot of those books where I'm like, I never know when the hell the next issue is going to come out. Like Avengers Aliens, where I'm like, I don't know when that comes out. Whenever poor Assad Ribic is finished with the next issue is when the book comes out. And so I'm just like, I don't know what the release date is on that. I just have like Google alerts for that one, just and certain other books where I'm like, oh, good. It's or people are talking about it. I guess I should go find it. But yeah.
Benjamin Hall, thank you very much, saying Mugshots 4 was a little underdeveloped in my opinion. As I said in a review for Comic Con, Thomas almost writes Constantine but veers away. Also, Vaseline, Sal, really?
I don't know. You know, the thing is, Vaseline is such a versatile chemical. Like you can use it for anything. It's non-toxic, you know? So I don't know. You never know with comic books. I'm not suggesting that you should, you know, I see what you're suggesting. But
definitely don't grease up your comic books. Don't
this is a family show. Ben, come on.
I will say that Mugshots 4 did wrap up a bit fast, in my opinion. Like it did. It was one of those things that was going, and then I was surprised at 4 that it was the end. I was like, oh, it's over. I was kind of like, oh, I was hoping it would keep going. So I do know what you mean, but like I really enjoyed it. I really liked the art style on it. I'll pull the cover up briefly.
Yeah, please.
I just thought like the art style was really kind of slick and unique with the colored backgrounds. They would flip between blue and kind of this orange yellow color, kind of like what I have for the different emotional kind of beats, depending on what was going on. And it was just a very pleasant book to read from that standpoint. Like you kind of fell into kind of like the crime vibe of it because of the art style. So it was kind of like, ooh, like it had the style I felt down very, very well.
Yeah, I'm getting major like Powers vibes / Zdarsky vibes from this.
Yeah, it had that kind of flair, but with like a small town, like lower class seedy kind of crime drama like going on. So
That's awesome.
That was fun.
All right, I have to check that out.
Add it to the pile.
Add it to the pile.
Xtober7, thank you very much. I love your work, guys. Speaking of omnibuses, what about the Marvel versus DC books? That's like honestly, I'm so glad that happened.
Yeah,
I'm really thrilled. And then it got delayed for a bit. Like I was watching Dom of X's channel. It kept being like, it's delayed. And I'm like, oh no. But then it actually came out. So I was glad. I was worried it wasn't going to make it.
Yeah, I was watching my Amazon order just constantly. Like the date kept changing. And I'm like, stop! I mean, and as I understand it, the Amalgam one, the one that collects all the amalgams and DC. Okay, so the fun thing is that like all the DC Marvel crossovers, except for JLA Avengers, are in the omnibus called DC versus Marvel. Ironically, DC versus Marvel is not in DC versus Marvel.
No,
that's
it's
collected
not.
in omnibus in an amalgam. But amalgam, I heard, as I've seen like the beautiful like prints of like pages and stuff. Apparently, what happened was they had a huge printing error and they had to pulp all the copies and had to go back to print. And I'm like, okay, that sucks. But yeah, I'm thinking like February is when we're gonna get it. And it won't be finished. There's some books that they didn't put in there.
Yes, I noticed that right away when I was going through what was on there. It just irked the completionist in me. I was like,
I know, like I get it. I get it. And by the way, just Google it. Don't ask us. But like I get why, but also like but it's not complete.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I mean, like, look, it was during the height of hedonism and gluttony in the comic book industry. There are probably like 600,000 copies of every Amalgam book out there. Like, you could just get them.
It's
Like,
true. It's not like they're too hard to find. It's not like some of the stuff, like the Golden Age things they reprint, and it's like, oh, finally.
yeah. Well, it's funny. That keys into something that a friend of mine was talking about recently, where it's like, it's so hard to be like a collector
Mhm.
of DC as opposed to like being a Marvel collector. And the reason is because, like, let's say you want a first appearance, and that's your thing. Like, you're picking up
Yeah.
first appearances, right? Like, you want a first appearance of like Gwen Stacy. You only
Mhm.
have to go back as far as like the late 60s, early 70s, you know? But if you want a
Mhm.
first Black Cat, you got to go back to Batman 1, essentially. Like, you have to go back to
Want Catwoman?
1941. Yeah,
'Cause,
like
if
there.
you want Black Cat, you would still have to go back that far, but you'd have to go to Harvey Comics for the original
Oh,
Black Cat.
sure, yeah, for that Black Cat, yeah. But if you want Felicia Hardy, you only have to go to the 70s. That's not bad. That's a little bit. That's relatively easier to achieve. But if you want like the first Flash, it's like, oh my god,
Yeah,
like,
because it's like some of the things, it's like some of them, if the character's popular enough, they'll end up in a 75-year anniversary or something like that. But some of them, it's like, oh, I want Dr. Fate, or I want, the Sandman. It's like, oh, well, that's too
oh,
bad.
well, that's too bad. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and especially like if you're the more niche the character, or at least the more the more golden age it is, the
Mhm.
less likely you're gonna get like a nice collection of any of them.
Mhm.
Like, they're just harder to put together.
Speaking of Psycho Jet Black, thank you again. Saying, Sal, what's your favorite gold and silver age stories? Do you delve too much into the gold and silver ages?
I very rarely go into the golden age.
Mhm.
What brought me into comics was Marvel, but back in the day.
Mhm.
So I have a lot, like, I have an affinity for that universe and for those characters. So like when it comes to silver, like a lot of the Stan and Jack stuff, which
Mhm.
is fun to read, even though you have to understand, like, it's a different time, the different
Everything in its
people.
time.
Exactly. But I love old Silver Age books. More now than ever. Like, as a kid, I remember a friend of mine who didn't read comics had a copy of, and I don't think this really counts as silver, but maybe it does. But like The Coming of Galactus, and it had this like newer, I think it was Ron Lim cover on this like really small collection,
Mhm.
and I was like, this looks great, and I opened it up, I'm like, oh man, it's old stuff, get it out of here. Uh, but I have like a real affinity for it now, especially
Mhm.
stuff that I missed. Like as a kid, I read a lot of, like, I read everything Spider-Man. So like I have read all of Stan and Steve and John and all that stuff. Like I've seen his transition and growth as
Mhm.
a character and as an art icon, and so like I have an appreciation for pretty much every art style for that character. But as a result, then I can like put that out of my mind, and if someone shows me like an issue of the Eternals, I can go
Mhm.
like, neat, like, look at what Jack's doing, and look at like what
Mhm.
Jack's like pushing, and that's kind of cool. And looking into other characters that I wouldn't normally read. But what always brought me back when it comes to Silver Age, as a kid and today, is Neil
Mhm.
Adams Batman stuff.
Mhm.
Just how modern it
Mhm.
looked as a kid, and how contemporary it like stands up to books of today. It's not
Yeah.
one to one. And I'm not saying that like artists today are better than Adams. I'm saying that, like, Adams's art is so contemporary for its time and for now. And it's just like, I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. And then you look at the year it came out, and I'm like, I can't believe, like, you look at that compared to everything that was coming out at the same time. It's like,
Mhm.
oh
It
my God.
stands out.
So
Yeah.
so different, and so like modern. And I'm not saying that I'm a sucker for modern art, but it's like it was a real like trendsetter. And I'm like,
Mhm.
that's really cool. So I appreciate that.
No, I know what you mean. It's like sometimes you see an artist and they're just doing something. Like for me, it's Kurt Schaffenberger with his Lois Lane from the Silver Age Lois comics, and
Yes.
all the variety of expressions and stuff he added to her face is something I noticed right away. And I just think it's so fun and makes her such a vibrant, ridiculous, conniving character in those stories. And he's just having so much fun with the different ways that he's drawing her. And it just makes it a joy to read those. I'm so glad some of them are making it into the DC's finest. I'm like, yes, the world will finally know about
Yes. And it's
Superman's
so great.
girlfriend, Lois Lane.
I know. I love that title. It's so great to get like those books into people's hands, because all it takes sometimes is just access.
Mhm.
Like, you know, it's one thing to have someone like you, like, or me, tell the audience, this is a really cool thing. I hope one day you could find it. And it's another to like be to have it in your hand and go like, this is really like, you know, this is really contemporary, or this is really funny or irreverent,
Mhm.
and have it like hit you the way it hits, you know, people who are familiar with it.
Mhm. Revolutionary Dragon, thank you very much. Hey, Silent CC, if there wasn't a Comics Code Authority, what do y'all think the industry would be like today? I think less superhero heavy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it wasn't like they invented the comics code because of all the superheroes.
No, no, because they were already waning in popularity before that. And it's kind of like all the restrictions the code brings because it targets like horror so heavily
Yeah.
and all of the rules around crime and that kind of stuff. It kind of leaves space to make it really easy to do superhero stories because they can adhere quite easily to the rules of the code.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think you hit on something really fundamental, which is that like it would have made, I think, because the comics code wouldn't have existed to actively suppress the alternatives.
Hmm.
Those alternatives would have probably become more prolific. And
Yeah.
so as a result, like it actually, I'm sure, I mean, you know, getting really in the weeds with it for a second,
Hmm.
you know, the Comics Code Authority was birthed from the seduction of the innocent and the
Yes.
demonization of comics and the stigmatization of comics.
Yes.
Without the need for it means that there wasn't this built-in institutionalized stigma on comic books. And so as a result, we probably would have a comic book industry that would rival or surpass the manga industry of today, where like there'd be an understanding and acceptance of comics as a viable and like, you know, popular medium, an
Hmm.
alternative medium to like storytelling that like people would just accept. People would be like, "Oh man, I read this amazing graphic novel about such and such," you know, about like,
Hmm.
yeah, the same way that you'd hear anyone talking about any manga today, where it's like, you know, I read this beautiful story about like, you know, a couple that
Hmm.
loved each other and that was it. Like,
Yeah.
I know I'm really being like one dimensional about that, but I mean like, I don't want to give away any plots to like a couple of really cool stories that I know like that are out there. Um, but I like that idea of that's a fun thought exercise. I love to live in a world where like comics didn't have that handicap
It's
because yeah.
interesting because there are things that come out of it though, and like
Hmm.
what it gives rise to. And it's like because some of the things and the companies that come out of it, like I'm not sure if we would have Marvel necessarily as it is
Yeah.
without the comics code because what was going on with like its attempts at Atlas and those kind of things. So I'm like it's interesting to ponder, and it's just one of those things where I am always saddened by the loss of, some of the companies, particularly EC, which is why I'm always so happy that like I'm like, look at Oni Press like doing EC things. Yay.
Yeah.
Like that
Oh
makes me
man.
glad to see. But I think right now we're seeing a bit of a resurgence and the other genres kind of coming to the fore. And I know it's still like a niche, like hobby space. It doesn't feel like that when you talk about it all the time, but like it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% true. The fact is like I think the real answer, and I think it's why I feel so optimistic about it,
Mhm.
is because of what you said. And it's like we live in a world post CCA now. So we know what it would look like. It looks like this, where there's equal opportunity for all kinds of stories. I mean, like, you know, with the Comics Code Authority, you would not have gotten a story like Nice House on the Lake.
Mhm.
Now you have it, and you have, you know, the floodgates. You have like those that the Dark Spaces dungeon story, which would never have even been conceived of as a result of that kind of restriction, um, because there is no restriction today. The sky's the limit as far as storytelling is concerned, and your only limitation is access and, you know, the public's interest,
Mhm.
and that's like a golden age of comics, which is unfortunate because, you know, there I always maintain like because of like a 70-year-old built-in stigma, comics aren't, you know, shoulder to shoulder with any of the other entertainment mediums we have today, and it's just like it sucks, and we're working towards making it normalized because of, you know, on one hand the proliferation of the comic book superhero movie, and on the other just normalizing it and having full-grown adults being like unabashedly saying, I read comics and it's cool. Like,
One of the great things that I see in the parenting space is a growing acceptance of using them as a way to help kids learn to read, which I think is wonderful because I know that a lot of people did learn to read, or it helped them learn to read, by reading comics, and they
yeah.
count. It's one of those things. I'm like, reading is reading. Like a comic is still, it's a book. It counts. So I'm
Yeah.
always glad to see that. I'm like,
No, you're so right.
de-snobifying reading is always a good thing.
Yeah, it used to be a like a secret, like
Mhm,
I learned big words by reading Calvin and Hobbes, or like I
mhm.
learned nuance and subtlety and storytelling from quietly reading comics, under a blanket with a flashlight. Whereas now it's like, no, the comics are in the classroom. Like parents are using them as instructional tools. The education industry is aware of the use and and possibility of comic books. Like the YA space is completely
Mhm.
choked with comic books, or at least
Mhm.
comic adjacent properties.
Yes.
You know. But yeah, that's awesome.
Cat Laura will defend for treats. Thank you very much. Absolutely here for this crossover. Are either of you into zine culture? I don't for Fan Expo or Comic Con as much, but love TCAF, can zine type events. I used to be like when I was younger, like, like Wizard and like, I don't know if those count, but like those kind of things. Like I was
Right.
way into like Comics Journal and like that kind of stuff and
Totally.
Star Trek zines, like those kind of
Mm.
things. So, but less so now. Less so. What about you?
I never really knew what a zine was until, and this is kind of embarrassing, but like they Wildstorm published a Gen 13 zine
Hmm.
that was in every way. I mean, a zine, as far as I was aware, is kind of like an underground, independent, like pop art, really like, you know, kind of irreverent and envelope pushing forward publication. Like it's made on Xerox machines. It's not about like getting a sponsorship. It's about like cutting out pictures and
Yeah.
slapping them into a thing and printing them out and putting them out and giving them away at like music shows.
Hmm.
So and I learned all this from Image Publishing, like a clean, glossy, sketchbook essentially of Gen 13 crap. And
Hmm.
but because of that, that got me like aware of the concept itself and kind of looking for it in my college days. I went to school down in like Richmond, Virginia, and so like I was very plugged into like the kind of like independent music scene and pop culture scene of Richmond of all places. And so like I was familiar. I got bombarded with zines, and I wanted to and tried to actually kind of like take that over when I used to work as a teacher. I brought like I tried to create a zine club
Hmm.
with our school where I was like, we're gonna like, because there was a literary magazine that I actually used to work for back when I worked at that school, back when I went to that school. Um, and that was very polished and very like, safe,
Hmm.
but I was like, and we're gonna do the zine, and the zine will be smaller and cheaper and grittier. And we're gonna give it out at like, other people's events.
Hmm.
And the concept was complete. It just went over everybody's heads, and they were like, "Why would we need two magazines?" And I'm like, "No, but they're not magazines. This is more like a cheaper, crappier, like uglier thing." And they're like, "Why would we make that at all?" And I'm like, "All right, well,
Because it's cool.
yeah, because it's cool. Because the right kids will appreciate it." And they didn't even know what I was talking about. So yeah, but I'm so far removed from that culture. There's a awesome used record store / coffee shop in my town that would probably have them. That's as far as I am, as far as connected.
Hmm.
I'll see them on like a table discarded after a punk show, and I'm like, cool.
Like every now and again, I like see like or hear word of something, but at this time, like I don't always have time to like fully dive into what it is
Yeah.
anymore. So
No. Yeah. You want to edit one episode? It's going to be like one episode of one show. It's going to be 4 or 5 hours. Like I'm.
yeah, at least. So
Yeah.
Stephen Turner, thank you very much. Have you checked out Storm 2 yet? If so, thoughts. It's one of the most beautiful books I'm reading right now with art by Lucas Wernick. I am behind. What about you? Have you checked it out?
Oh, I'm behind. I feel really bad, and I don't want to like. Marewa sent me a copy of Storm
Oh.
2, and I have not had a chance to sit down and read it. And so I'm going to read it probably tomorrow morning, because we have to review it on Monday.
Mhm.
But yeah, I dug the first issue. I have not read the second issue, but I know how much the creators on that book love it. and are
Mhm.
so excited by it, and I hope it translates.
Mhm. That's the thing about talking to people. It's like you start to get some of the inside things about like what they're going for. And then it's really interesting to see if those things land or not. And it's like sometimes you're really hoping that they do. You're like, oh, I hope that like what they're trying to get across resonates with,
Yes,
people.
right? I just talked to them and they seem really excited about it. I hope they get their thing. And it's like sometimes it works and sometimes not.
Xtopher7, thank you very much. Now I have the need of an episode of Casually Comics featuring Tiff discussing the Sandman books. Let's make it happen. Or maybe a back issues episode featuring Casually Comics.
Yeah, we'll have to work that out. Well, the thing with back issues is you'll have to come to New Jersey. So I apologize for that in advance. Yeah, man, the Sandman thing is tough now because of the whole gaming of it all. I
It
don't know
does,
about
like,
you. Like, how do you
my
feel about?
friend,
I don't want to get into it too deeply.
no, it's like my friend Amanda and I, like, because she discusses a lot of that kind of stuff on like her channel and stuff. She's like, it does make it difficult because she's like, she feels like, and like, because we talked about it on our show too, where it's kind of like you feel like you want to say something, but you're not always sure like what or how to address it or like that kind of thing. We don't want to not say anything because then other people are going to say stuff in the comments stuff anyway. So it does make it a bit more difficult to discuss. It's just one of those things that then if you decide to discuss it anyway, like with certain topics, going into it, you kind of have to do the mental, like, okay, so like, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it this way and like that kind of thing. And it's just like, when you go into making an episode like that, it has to be something you really want to make. Cause it's like, because
you're gonna have to stand by it too. Like you're gonna have to be like, you're gonna have to deal with the fallout of it as well. And it's like,
because like you never know when someone's gonna be like, they said that on like this video, and you're like, oh no, I did say that on this.
That's
video.
true. Yeah, and you don't have any control over that. People will take what you say and point it out / use it for their own arguments or their own discussions, and you're like, yep.
It's like this is the internet.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a tough one, and it's like, you just wait for. I'm essentially waiting for more info, and just I try very hard to divorce myself from like artist and art, but at the same time, like sometimes you can't.
It's one of those things that like everybody's is different. And that's the thing too, is that everybody has a different mileage or a different threshold or a different thing that hits them. And sometimes what it is or isn't surprises you. Like, I don't know if you've had that where it's like, oh, like I didn't think this would affect me this much, or I thought I would be more upset or something like that. It's just, it's weird because you never know,
Yeah, absolutely. No, very, very true. Yeah. There's some, there's some folks not in the comic sphere, but in like the entertainment sphere where I'm like, I can't watch that anymore. Like,
oh yeah, I've had that where like I'll learn something about some behind the scenes thing. I'm like, oh well, now I'm never watching this movie again. Like,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Psycho Jet Black, thank you very much. Will TikTok videos about comics bring in new fans? I think absolutely, and they are. They are. Like TikTok, like I'm not on TikTok, but I'm not anti TikTok. Like TikTok's a fun space, and there are some people making really fun stuff on there. I just find that I don't think well in short form content. Like I have to really think about it a lot harder than long form. I don't know. What about you?
It is tough. I mean, like, as you can tell from just this one smattering of an episode, brevity is not exactly the soul of my wit. I need space, and I talk, and sometimes it works and other times it doesn't, but I am not good in, as you said, short bursts. I still try, but at the same time, it's also like, I got to make this video, man. It's an hour and a half long. Like, now you want me to shoot like 20 videos in a row, and they're all like really, really sharp and funny and biting, or at least incredibly like substantive, that have a lot of like detail and information. And no, like, and I see them and I'm like, there's an art form to it. Like there is, right? Like there are some people who are like, hey, here's this information, and they just boom, 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 and it's in, and I'm like, that was only 45 seconds, and they put pictures in, and I'm like, wow, good on you, man.
I'm like, I'm studying it like a nerd. Like I will study like shorts
and there is an algorithm to it. No,
and I'm like, I will defeat this. I'm like, one day I will find the format that works for me. I'm like, there's a way for me to do this. I just haven't fully clicked with whatever it is yet. I'm like, I'll get there eventually.
Yeah, and it's also not always the thing I want to do. Like I spend my days all day, every day, talking about comic books for, let's be realistic, 2 hours a day.
Mhm.
And if I'm gonna like make a cute little video that's like on my phone, maybe I don't want to talk about comic books. Like maybe I want to talk about the new Alien movie. But the audience is like, what? Don't do
You
that.
don't have other interests?
Yeah, I'm certainly not interested in hearing you talk about other interests. So let's put that away. But yeah, TikTok's a whole other space. But yes, it is working. It is
There
working to
are,
get
yeah,
people interested.
there's a comic talk world over there and like
Oh
big
yes.
creators and like you should like I'm sure you saw it. I'm just saying like you should have to the person who made the comment. Like you should have seen like all of the like absolute stuff and things when that was popping off on
Yeah.
TikTok. Like that was just memes and all over the place. That was a lot of fun. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's fun. And you'll see it like transfer other places like Reels, I guess. But
mhm.
but TikTok's the
Shorts
you know,
somewhat. Like shorts are a bit of a
shorts.
different animal, but
Absolutely. But you could say, I mean, like, and I mean, TikTok creators are like, well, I mean, I already made it. I might as well,
yeah, it's
let's
like I'll just
pollinate.
put it over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Tyler DeBoer, thank you very much. Guy Fieri is Condiment King in the future. Yes or no?
Yeah. I feel like it's a little
always
on the nose. I'm a little worried. I mean, at that point, you know.
on my channel, people are always here for the Condiment King. They want the
Mhm.
Condiment King to appear in some way. It's always a happy day when we get a Condiment King sighting, which I think the
Sure.
last one on our channel was the DC Go stuff for the Harley Quinn in Paradise that they're doing for the new like mobile stuff. There was like a panel with Condiment King when she had kidnapped him to be the ketchup dispenser for a date that she was on.
Eh,
So
okay. Wow. So he's on the rise.
yes.
I mean, I'm shocked that Conan King isn't a breakout character in the Harley Quinn HBO show or Max show. I'm shocked
And that
they
it was
like,
Kite Man.
yeah, like Kite Man, really? You made him his own spinoff, but you don't have anything funny to say about Conan King. I mean, but the fact that like McFarlane made Conan King a figure makes me think,
Yes.
yeah, they'll put him somewhere.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
he'll
saw
get
that. And like you had to, it was like a collectible one where it's like you had to buy like multiple different ones to get all of Condiment
Yeah,
King.
he's a
And I was like, I
Build-A-Figure.
see you.
Yeah, they're like, listen, there are dozens of you, and I understand that you want him. So buy all of the variants of my Batman figures, and you will get a Condiment King.
As
But
your
yeah,
reward.
honestly, I mean, if Polka Dot Man can be on the Suicide Squad, Condiment King could easily be in the Suicide Squad too.
Yeah, there's a dark, gritty update for Condiment King out there just waiting to be told.
Yeah, and with Tom King at the helm over at DC, like it's only more possible than ever. But you're gonna have to get in line because Kite Man will appear.
He needs to go first. We've already
He
established
has
that.
to. Exactly. No, it's true.
Club Remix, thank you very much. Sorry, off topic. Have you ever seen a ghost? I saw one a couple of months ago. It was because of a gas leak. No, it's not real, but scared the crap out of me.
Have I ever seen a ghost? No.
When I was a kid, I thought I saw a ghost. I don't think I actually saw a ghost, though.
Yeah. Man, disappointing. I'm sorry we couldn't turn this into a show where we're just talking about ghosts now.
I know it's like secretly we've both had ghost
right,
encounters.
Yeah, like yes, we've both seen ghosts, and here's our show. Here's the show now. No, I've never seen a ghost. I've wanted to. I'm very agnostic when it comes to like agnostic. Like I wanted to add optimistic and agnostic at the same time, but I want to see ghosts, but if I do, it means I'm like probably either exposed to some kind of hazardous chemical or my mind is going. So I guess if I did see a ghost, I'd be kind of like, oh no, that means I have to go to a doctor.
See, it's like I wouldn't want to see a ghost because for me, since I am like a bit more open to those kind of concepts things, I'm like, oh no, like the veil has been pierced. Like this is bad.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
no.
I kind of want that. I'm always like, no, I want to see a ghost. Show me an angel, a ghost, an alien. I'm in. But show them to me. I don't want to hear from somebody over there that they saw a ghost. No.
Like you need to see it firsthand.
I better see this ghost. I want to interact with this ghost. Can I bust it? That's really the important question. But no, sorry.
Psycho Jet Black. Any predictions for the third Spider-Verse movie?
Right?
I'm really excited for it. Like that's what I know. I'm really down for it.
It'll be cool when they finish writing it. I've heard rumors that it's not even like they went back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I've heard like it just like had to be revamped like entirely. So
that's not good. That's not a good sign. I hope it's good. I mean, like they said, look, it writes itself. I mean, if you follow what the movie was telegraphing in 2, I mean, like when it ends with like the old gang getting back together, I'm like, I mean, you only have so many times. It's not like the movie's going to be 120 minutes. You know, Miles goes through an arc. The other spider people show up. Will they, won't they with Gwen? End of movie. You know, I mean, like, hopefully everybody learns a lesson and Jefferson doesn't die. That's all.
I'm really looking forward to all of the return of all of the memes, because there's always great memes with those movies, and like all like the Thirsty Miguel O'Hara, the like his sketchbook, all those things. I'm like, people are having so much fun with this movie, and it's fun for me.
Sony's good at that, and that's like the first time you'll ever get me to say that. But Sony's really like, they're aware of like when they have something, you know, like when they were like, we skillfully cast John Mulaney, and then we're going to like tell him. I saw him do like an interview like back when the first one came out, where he was like, and then they just had me riff, you know, for 10 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, John, they were never going to put that in a movie. That is all for virality. They knew the movie was going to be successful. They wanted to put you on TikTok and like just place those clips everywhere. They're good at that. They're not good at necessarily making movies, but they are good at like knowing when, like what the audience is going to either laugh at or laugh with. And
what's going to resonate and kind of become you know, replayed over and
like
over.
I wouldn't have re-released Morbius, but I would have like released Morbius immediately onto digital and just leaned heavily into the memes.
I think that would have been better than re-releasing it, because re-releasing it made it come across like a bit more like, oh, they actually like it. I'm like, oh no.
Oh no. You misinterpreted. You didn't read the room right. Like that was a bad read. Whereas with Madam Web, they were like, they're making fun of it, they're laughing about it, they want to see it. People are watching. like I have a collaborator, Hassan Kadir, who like watched the movie like 36 times in the theater on shrooms or something. You know, like they're doing things in this movie. Just get it in front of as many people as possible. Like they should have had like Madam Web watch parties where they're like, it's free, just go.
Try and like build like the Rocky Horror Picture Show experience.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, they should have gotten like a whole bunch. They should have called. You know what they should have done? This is just me riffing. I'm sorry. They should have just called like if you ever watch like Patton Oswalt has a bit where he talks about like doing punch ups, and like a lot of comedians, like a lot of like really good comedians, get like extra money by doing punch ups to scripts, where they'll be given scripts for movies that like are gonna come out soon, and they're like, we need you to just like punch up a couple lines, like make these lines work, you know, make the zhuzh up the movie, make it a little funnier. And so they should have called like that panel of people, you know, like call like Kumail Nanjiani and Patton Oswalt and, you know, a bunch of like really funny people, and then just like have them write the Rocky Horror Picture Show for Madam Web, you know, and then release it, you know, it'd be like, here's the movie, like go have fun. Warn all the theaters, like people are going to go there, they're going to throw bread at the screen, and just make it an experience. You have access to these funny people, you know, like make them work.
That would be a really fun experience, though. Like, people would definitely remember that.
Right? As it stands, I don't know if you've seen Madam Web. It's really bad. And
no, it is.
And it's not funny. Like I was not having fun.
That's the thing. I'm like, it wasn't entertaining bad for me, because I'm like, sometimes a movie's bad, I'm like, but I'm still having a great time. And it's like,
yeah, Morbius was kind of like that, where I was like, this is like, you know, all right. Like I was impressed with how, like, when I finished Morbius, I'm like, that was a movie. Like they made, you know, it's a Mad Libs, you know, like
I loved how I loved how intense some of the performances were in that movie. I'm like, this is some Jupiter Ascending level stuff, and
totally, yes. Like make a Cloud Atlas for superhero movies that no one wants to see, and I'm in. But Madam Web is just like, that was just so low effort, like.
And it's like, it's disappointing, because it's like, oh, I wish.
Yeah, because and it also is, it sucks. Like it really is, like, it's a shame too, because it's like female director, female led movie, female cast. Like, man, don't mess up, and also, you know, like make it an L for everyone involved, you know, like, you know, because it just makes the detractors go like, and we could see the correlation here. Like the mistake was letting women anywhere near this like, no, the issue is the movie sucks.
So the issue was that it was bad, and like things went wrong very early.
Yes, things went wrong from the jump. Like when they said, hey, let's greenlight a Madam Web movie, like that was where it all went wrong. And you can't blame anyone else for anything else that happened with that
From
movie.
that starting point.
Yeah.
Psycho Jet Black, thank you very much, is asking, what are the best comics involving ghosts?
All right. Just launching
What's
his comic ghosts channel. And he's like, I need
What's
some.
funny to me is that I was actually looking at old issues of Ghost recently, just like thinking about buying some. I was just like, oh, Ghost. You know?
Yeah, that's a book I am intimately familiar with what Ghost looks like. That Dark Horse Comics published it, that she crossed over with characters like I think Batgirl, like I think Cassie Kane crossed over with Ghost. I've literally never read a single issue of Ghost. I don't even know she is a ghost. I'm kind of like, is she a ghost? I don't know.
It was one of those things where I was going like through I want to like buy some like comics on sale. And I was actually on Etsy, just like going through like what was there. I ended up getting a bunch of Star Trek comics instead. And that's what happened instead of Ghost. But
instead of poor Ghost. Yeah, I don't know, man. There's I mean, like, you know, this is an IP, but like the IDW Ghostbusters book was pretty great for a long time, and I really enjoyed that. But I don't read books for ghosts. You know, I'm not like, oh, there's ghosts in this one. But I will say, yeah, there's a good one. There's a good Batman story from like I want to say it was either like the late '60s or like 1970, which I think Neil Adams drew, where Batman deals with ghosts. It's like a couple who are ghosts. That's kind of fun. It's really weird.
I covered a ghost story recently. It was a Supergirl encounters a ghost. That one was less good, but it was kind of random.
Poor Supergirl. She's always like, it's either a horse or or a ghost, or you know, they're always like throwing the random stuff at Supergirl. Like, you can travel through time just by wanting to. Like, okay.
I would say if you're looking for ghosts, some of the EC archive stuff, they're not all ghosts, but there are some interesting ghost stories in there. And I just like, I'm a fan of going back to those kind of classic stories and seeing what they were working with. Also, some of the, I'd say the 70s horror boom is good for some of that as well. Some of the anthology books they did there at Marvel and DC, like House of Secrets, House of Mystery, like all of those type of things would have some stories in there, because when they were playing with the loosening of the code and they're like supernatural creatures, we can do them now. So there's a whole bunch of stuff from that time.
100%. Oh yeah, and if you read any book by somebody mentioned in the chat, DeMatteis, probably. I'm like, yeah, they're not ghosts though. They're like ghosts of the past. Like they're memories that take form only in their psyche. Like they're not literal ghosts, even though they do appear as ghosts on the page. But that's just,
although some people say that's what ghosts, that instantly made me think of, there's this Spanish movie called El Espinazo del Diablo, where it's like starts off with like que es un fantasma. It's like it starts this whole speech about like ghosts are just memories of like echoes in time, and like that's how they manifest. That's instantly what that made me think of. Which also that's a movie worth checking out.
but I assume it also dabbles in magical realism as well, and that, like, you know, because I remember being really subjected to a lot of Spanish cinema, because my Spanish teacher used to be an actor from Chile who like he was a soccer champion who became an actor, and like his big claim to fame was that he sold Reloj de Time International. But yeah, and we watched a lot of like movies about like I remember very vividly there was one about a little girl who died, and then that's like how the movie opens, and then she explodes into butterflies. And he was trying to explain like all Spanish cinema is this. And I'm like, I think that's fair. I've seen El Norte, and I don't think there was any magical butterflies in that one. But
our Spanish teacher was big on like movies about the Civil War. So of course, even though that was a horror movie, it was also about
the American Civil War.
No, their Civil War. The Spanish.
Oh, good. Okay. It's like, no, and I really just I just really responded to it. Good. Okay. Well, at least there's something there.
Xtopher7, thank you very much. Are you guys ready for Creature Commandos? The comic team we're asking for, he said sarcastically. Oh, wow. Oh, sarcasm. Okay. The comic team we're asking for. Any expectations? What obscure character from DC would you like Gunn to bring to the big screen?
Oh, I'd be more, just like with the Star Wars Skeleton Crew, I would be way more excited if this was a movie. I'm looking forward to Creature Commando. I'm sure Creature Commandos will be fun. But like, can't we just make a movie? Like, I don't have time for another show. Like, can we just make it a movie and be done with it? You know, like I'm down. I'm down. It looks fun. I think that the trailer really relied heavily. They were like, it's gun, put music in there. And I'm like, all right, we don't need needle drops every 5 seconds. But, yeah, I'm excited for it. It looks cool and the actors are good and the creators are fine. I'm not excited about any of them, but I'm like, hey, cool. It looks fun. I'm down. And they'll all be the people. Like if they make a live action version, those people will be them. If the bride ever wants to be in a Batman movie, they'll put her in there.
Yeah, they're trying to build the synergy. In terms of obscure characters, some people have been really pitching that they'd like to see the Monarch of Madness. There are dozens of us, but I think that might be interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing more and more obscure people pop up these days, which is always fun for me. I love when they reach back, and because a lot of those people do have potential. Yes. And like you look at the story, you're like, you know what? Okay, like the story's a little clunky, maybe, but like there's a lot of potential here inside the character itself. It just needs maybe a different story to kind of bring that out.
Well, that Brave and the Bold cartoon put like Gentleman Ghost on television. There are a lot of there are a lot of deep cuts throughout DC that you can pull, and all they need is one good story, and people will immediately fall in love with them. I mean, look at Kite Man.
It was nice to see the revival for The Spot. Like, I always thought The Spot was cool. I made a video on The Spot years ago, but I gave it one of those like YouTube titles that was kind of like hinting like, oh, is like The Spot like not any good? And so like when The Spot came out in that movie, a bunch of people came and read the title and just left comments that were like, this aged like milk.
Right. You're like, watch the episode. You'll see that he's cool. Like
he is really cool. Now everybody knows.
Yeah, exactly. That's good though. That drives engagement though. So feel free, Yeah, I mean, I really raked this character over the coals, but now I'm kind of like, well, with the passing of Keith Giffen years ago, like I'm down for like a heckler appearance or just any of his characters would be fun. Or I mean, anybody from Bloodlines would be great to see.
Revolutionary Dragon, thank you very much. What are y'all thoughts on Arcane if y'all watched it? I have not watched it yet. It is on my to-watch list because I am behind with many a show. What about you?
I have not. I don't watch a lot of TV, and when I do, I watch like old TV or garbage TV. I'm just like, I don't have time for this. I'll just watch Frasier or like some like repeat of a challenge show.
Well, like as someone who like regularly rewatches Ink Master, no judgment like at all.
Right? Yeah, like I'm kind of like what I really want to watch is more Face Off, the Sci-Fi Channel original makeup show.
Oh, that show's great.
Such a good show. I loved Face Off. I used to have Face Off watch parties. Everyone would come over and we just crap on people's baked-in expressions and unrealistic, blendings, and I'm just like, yeah.
I have a friend like we do that for like Glow Up because even though that's just they have a special effects episode, but that's just mostly makeup.
Yeah, that's just makeup.
Like,
yeah. No, I tried to watch that Jim Henson show and I was like, there's no way this is gonna matter. Like, there's no way this is gonna last. You can't make puppets in 90 minutes. You need time.
Now, I like Arcane a lot. Arcane's very good, but Arcane's also very heavy. It's a lot of like human suffering and like misery and like nuances. The kind of thing where I need to be in like the mood. I need to get into the headspace for Arcane. It's really good though. I really like it. And the animation is very cool. And it's the coolest adaptation of a video game I'm never gonna play. So
totally. Totally fair.
I'm like, League is that's not my game. So when I have the time to game, which is not that often, not as much as I'd like. NA55, thank you very much. I was saying at Psychojet Black, Ghost Rider is the best comic involving ghosts. Hashtag catch retrospective. Yes, I know. You're always on me to make the catch retrospective for Ghost Rider one day. And now there's an Omni. So now I have no more excuses because they've collected it all together. So it's right there.
That's right. And there's a Ghost Rider 2099 omnibus as well. That's out there now.
Oh, I'm so glad the 2099s are out there. There's some really interesting 2099 stories. I'm like, yes.
Yeah, and some not so interesting. I don't remember. Did they make a Doom? Because Doom is the one to buy if they made any. I know they made Spider-Man and Ghost Rider. Hulk is not. You can skip Hulk. It's not good.
Dan V900, thank you very much. The Craven director saying to give them a chance, and he knows people were burned by other Sony films is not a great sign. It's so listen, you have to do what you got to do to get people to come out, and he's not wrong that there is a
Right.
contingent of people who will potentially write it off because of the other movies. So I don't think it's a terrible idea to, be like, hey, I would like you to come see this one, please.
Yeah, it rings a little desperate, and I understand. I mean, like, I'm sure because Sony never looks at it. Like, Sony's always like, "What? Morbius didn't do well? What? But this is as good as anything I see out there." I'm like, "That's your problem." With Craven, I can imagine the director of Craven being like, "I can see that no one's watching it. Like, no one's coming to Craven. I need to do something drastic. Please come see my movie. Please just come out. Just come see it. I'll give you $1." Yeah,
You
I know
gotta put some like really weird clips out there. We need like a strange marketing campaign, like the one they did for Long Legs, where it was just stuff like the trailers of her heartbeat, or just like a poster of the bottom half of his face screaming with nothing else on it. I'm like, we need some like weird stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they go TikTok, where it's like they show half the movie over here and the other half is like just people playing video games, just some really like mundane system, or someone like cutting into things that aren't cake. Yeah, I mean, like, Craven is going to be R-rated. I've seen the like red band trailers, and I've also seen like people really respond to it. Like, that's the thing that really concerned me, where I was like, people are like, "Whoa, like there's going to be blood and stuff in this movie. Dope." And I'm like, that's enough? Like, that's all it takes? Really? But I mean, like, I'm not surprised anymore. So I guess, yeah, I hope you enjoy it. But like, even that isn't enough, I don't think. I mean, like, no one's here to see your movie. I'm sorry. I mean, like, I know one guy is going to be seeing the Craven movie because of Craven, but like, otherwise, like, people want to see a Craven movie because Spider-Man's in it.
Curiosity factor.
I didn't see Venom 3: The Last Dance. I don't believe in them. I'm like, no, just stop. Like, people aren't here to see your...
You're the person that he's trying to reach.
They are. Yeah, no, he's definitely like, please just give me a chance. And I'm like, no. Like, I look him dead in the face and just like, just look him, dead in the eyes and give him a sympathetic sigh and go, no, I'm not going to help him. No, I will see it because I do a podcast with DJ over at Only Stupid Answers where we talk about Spider-Man movies. I will have to watch it someday, but it is not this one. And I'm not seeing it for full price. Like, there's no way, Sony would have to fly me someplace tropical to see this movie and pay for dinner. And I'd still probably hate it.
But you would have been well fed at least. So
I wouldn't have been hungry at least.
I used to go and see everything.
Yeah.
Like, before the kids, I would go and see everything. I'd be there like opening night, that kind of thing. I'm like, now, not so much anymore. And it's like, I am more likely to skip things if I don't think I'm going to have a good time. Like, if I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Because I don't want to go out and have a bad time or like waste my time. So like,
right. Like, I paid a sitter to... Like, this movie cost me the money of the movie and this. Like, it better have been worth it. And it's like,
exactly.
Craven is not worth that much work. Yeah, I don't have kids and I still don't do that. I'm still like, but outside.
Psycho Jet Black is saying, will Sony ever make a John Jameson Man-Wolf movie?
If you see Craven, they will. Like, if you keep seeing these movies, if these movies keep breaking, like, Venom 3 made money. And it's like, look, Venom 3 didn't make $1 billion, but it made any money. And if it makes any money, Sony sees that as a good sign. They're just like, oh, they want it. Keep going. So yeah, they'll make a Man-Wolf movie, but like, be prepared, like in all the other movies, for like Jonah to not be in it. Like, the thing you want, a movie with J. Jonah, I'd watch a J. Jonah Jameson, like The Pulse movie, where it's just like,
the thing is, I think you could actually make a compelling John Jameson werewolf movie, but I do think you would need like the additional, people to be in. I'm like, you'd need that drama with his dad to like really help sell some of what was going on. I'm not opposed to the concept of a John Jameson werewolf movie, though. That could be fine.
Morbius could have just been Man-Wolf. Like, not that like it's like it follows the origin perfectly, but if you were to just remove the specific details of Morbius as a Mad Lib, they could have just made a Man-Wolf movie instead of a Morbius movie. Like, there is a guy, he has a problem, he wants to go, he wants, what, blood instead, erase, to go to the moon. Yeah, Man Wolf. Like, look, the reason why I'm so against it is because it's so easy for Sony to make a Man Wolf movie. It doesn't take any effort whatsoever. You know, he gets a magical gem. Because he's a magical
Now
girl.
it's a magical girl transformation movie.
John Jameson is a magical girl. Like, you know. But yeah, don't do it.
Benjamin Hall is saying, I would want a Sergeant Rock movie. You're not the only one. I have definitely heard people say that they would like a Sergeant Rock movie. So
I heard a rumor that like Daniel Craig is in talks to be Sergeant Rock. So yeah, you might get that.
Ben Chan says, thoughts on Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan or hashtag not my Hal.
Oh my God. Who cares?
I like Green Lantern as a mythos, as a concept. So I'm just one of those people who I'm very curious to see what they're doing with it. And I'm not anti the idea of jumping into the story with Hal already being older and like more potentially in a mentor kind of role and then focusing on other people. Like, I'm like, this DCU is going to kind of do its own thing. I was never really expecting to get, you know, classic kind of Hal. And I'm never going to get the Hal I want, which is hot mess, tripping over himself, Hal Jordan anyway. So it's just...
maybe. I mean, you know.
We'll see. It's like, don't let your dreams be dreams. But
yeah, I love Kyle Chandler. I think he's a good actor. I fear that Hal Jordan won't survive the first 10 minutes of this Lantern show, which is a shame. But also, like, I'm really surprised by how many characters in like big two Marvel / DC movies die and stay dead when there is no reason to even adhere to that concept. Like, I'm always like, oh, character died. Well, they'll be back. And then they're not. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, really? Like, we're really going to stick to that. So I'm like, yeah, no, Kyle could die. Like, you know, Hal could die. And then like Parallax could resurrect him, and then he's Parallax as a bad guy, and then they defeat him, and then Kyle continues to be. But like, he's already like 55 or something. Like, it's not a good idea to start your universe with your actors being like in their late 50s. Well, if you want to make 3 movies out of them.
Well, that's the thing. I'm like, when I see that, that leads me to believe that, like, oh, so they're just planning on having him maybe for a little bit and then phasing on to a bunch of the other lanterns, of which there are many. And I'm like, I like a lot of the other lanterns too. So I'm like, it would be interesting to see if they do something with some of the ones that don't get quite as much play, you know, because I'm like, you have choices.
Exactly. I'm down for, I mean, like, if you want, like, if you don't kill him, you could also just have him be Hal for a minute and leave and being like, Hal's doing big, cool Green Lantern stuff over there. And we're going to focus on like these characters instead. I mean, like, as you said, there's enough Green Lantern characters to go around. Like, we can still have John and, you know, Jesse and
it's the kind
Joe.
Of thing where if it wouldn't be hideously expensive, it would be cool to focus on the alien lanterns, but I'm like, the cost. Just even thinking about it.
Well, I love to see Kilowog show, yeah, but like, we're not gonna make a Kilowog show.
No.
Like, yeah.
The Willmeister, thank you very much. I was never going to like the Morbius movie.
I'm with you, Will.
As a villain, I found him almost interesting. Ooh, shots fired. As an anti-hero, I find him just boring. That movie was somehow both those things.
Yes. It's not great. And also, who cares? Like, yeah, I remember when we used to like try to tie in with movies, like be like, we'll do the Morbius book. Like, there's no Morbius book that people are gonna tune in to talk about. So it's like, all right, we'll do the Spider-Man origin, which actually was like, they used it, you know, the boat and everything. I'm like, oh my God, they're really using all of it. I guess they should, because there's not much to work with, you know. But
it's like, I feel like most people are familiar with Morbius from the Spider-Man cartoon, to be honest, but they remember the plasma hands. And
I can't believe they didn't do the plasma hands, because if you know Morbius, like 9 times out of 10, it's because of the cartoon. Like, there's no way you're like, oh man, like if you're a casual fan, you love Morbius because of all the comic book appearances or his crucial role as a Midnight Sun. No, you love Morbius because he's in his like black trench coat with his nebulous accent, and all he wants is plasma. He wants Felicia and plasma. These are the 2 things I know about Morbius. And I can't believe they didn't do it. Like, there was no moment where they strong-armed Jared Leto to go like, I must have plasma. Like, nothing. Like, that's
and I'm like, you could genuinely have actually made it really gross and cool too. I'm like, you could have done something with
it's so worse. Yeah, like the censors like, we can't have a vampire. They're like, okay, how do we get around it? Oh, I know. We'll make something 10 times grosser and
And it's like,
weirder.
what if he just had these like suction like on his actual hands, like mouths on his hands, like how
Yeah.
people animate those horror things where they put mouths on the eyes. They're like, let's just do that on his hands.
Yeah, and he sucks out not the blood, the plasma. He filters the plasma out of people's blood. What? This is it was insane and way more body horror centric
It
than
was.
a
They're like,
vampire.
but
A
you didn't see
vampire.
anything. So they're like,
Yeah.
code adhered to. You saw nothing.
Yeah, don't worry, we did it. And I can imagine the censors going like, that is what I asked for, I guess.
I know it's like I can't complain because they complied.
Yeah. Weird.
Cap lives. Thank you very much. Love both of your channels. Always thankful for my sister for putting me on to Casually Comics. I'm thankful to her too. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cap.
I need to catch up with all the chat. Psycho Jet Black, thank you very much. Will the MCU Blade fight against Dracula? Will we get an MCU Blade?
Will there be one? I mean, like, why not? Dracula is such a funny, weird Marvel character that, like, do it. You know, like, really, like, as the Emperor would say, just do it. Like, get Dracula working in the MCU.
The Tomb of Dracula is actually a very interesting book to go back and read. So I would actually be interested to see what you could pull from that, because there are some fun stories from that era. And like the original Blade from Tomb of Dracula is fairly different from the Blade I'm sure people would be expecting.
100%.
They're thinking they want 90s Blade.
They want 90s Blade, which I get and I would watch, but also like do a weird British Blade. Like make him British, like he should be, put him in green and have him fight Dracula.
Those videos would be great. I would love that. Just all the things that would pop up, just people being like, this is wrong. Like, why haven't they done
First of all, he has a British accent. This is weird and horrible. He doesn't wear sunglasses. What is happening? I would be so on board. I mean, like, at least it'd come out as opposed to whatever the hell we're getting.
It's just always sad to hear about development hell. You're like, someday someone's going to write a book about this. And it's going to be really interesting.
And yet we still don't have a Justice League Mortal book, which I've been pushing forever. I'm like, yo, get that book. I know there's promotion art. I know there's all kinds
it's like,
of
I want
crazy
to see it.
I want to see it. I want to see it.
X-Topher, thank you very much. Let's be honest. We are just a couple of years away from just Sony discovering Trouble and making it a Spider-Man-less movie, advertising it as the secret origin of Spider-Man. Maybe they'll make it the Madam Web sequel.
I would watch a Trouble movie, because a Trouble movie is just like a weird period piece, like sex drama or sex comedy. And I'm like, yeah, do that.
Because you could actually remove the Spider-Man elements from that fairly easily. It's like, then you've lost the hook though, but it's like, but you could do it. Like there's enough in there.
You don't even need to, I mean, you don't even have to like excise it. Just, he's not in it. Obviously, like Spider-Man doesn't show up in Trouble either. They just have all the names. So you're just like, you know, people go like, wait a minute, May, you know, that's all you need.
You want the slow dawning horror.
Yeah. Like, oh no. Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, I say go for it at this point. Who cares?
RLC Comics, thank you very much. Sal, will you do more of Dave Mateus' spectacular Spidey run on back issues? Child Within, maybe.
I mean, that's the only one to do as a thing. But there's an omnibus coming in the summer, so yeah. I mean, like when the omnibus comes out, then I'll have it all in one place, and then we'll talk about it. But yes, yeah.
Stephen Turner, thank you very much. The Sony flop movies, the savagery, don't even have the elements to become a camp classic like Halle Berry's Catwoman, which has built up a queer fandom over time. The basketball scene from like that movie's iconic. No, it has. Like there is a fan base for the Halle Berry Catwoman movie, and honestly, that one's fun to watch. That's the thing. I'm like, Halle Berry Catwoman is not a great movie, but it is an entertaining movie. Like I remember being entertained by it, and like, it's going for it so hard sometimes that it's hard not to be endeared by it a little bit if you like campy things, which I do.
Oh, sure.
So.
Well, it came at the right time, like where it's like, yeah, no, embrace the camp, like do this on purpose. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I would agree. Like those ones don't have that same level of fun. Like you don't have, except for like, okay, like Morbius has like the mirror dancing scene with like Matt Smith and stuff like that.
He knows what movie he's in. He's the only one.
No, definitely. Hulkzilla, thank you very much. A Moon Knight special where he hunts Dracula down.
Yeah, for his money. Or Yeah. You
What
big
I love
nerd.
about those like memes for Moon Knight is like sometimes you can't tell. You're like, is it a filled in panel or is it an actual Moon Knight panel? Like
Yeah.
that's the game.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. It's so funny. The idea of like an unhinged Moon Knight who's just like looking for Dracula because he thinks he took his money, like, and all these unanswered questions. Like, has Moon Knight ever met Dracula? Why would what scenario would be in place where Dracula would borrow money from Moon Knight? How long did Moon Knight wait before trying to collect on said like payment? I love the follow up where Moon Knight calls the Avengers and he's like Dracula, and then they're like, and then the Spider-Man's like, hey, you big stupid drunk. He's not an Avenger. First of all, Dracula told them he's an Avenger. Second, the implication that Moon Knight does this a lot and that he's an alcoholic. So much potential. If Jed McKay weren't crushing it on the Moon Knight book right now, I'd be like, do the book, like do that for real. Moon Knight has trouble and he needs help, and
Like, let's dive into the internet deep lore.
Yeah, exactly. Pay it off.
Dan V900, thank you very much. I find the Lantern Show concept weird, where it's said to be a true detective style mystery set on Earth. You can't set it in space? Listen, it's expensive to set things in space.
It's expensive. Yeah, I mean, like, God, the only thing I'm begging them not to do is be like, don't take away their rings or something. Like, don't make it be like, oh, they're cool for 2 seconds, and then like some jerk takes their rings, and then they're
and then that's the mystery. The mystery is like, where are their rings?
Yeah. I'm like, no, I'm not showing up for that. I will watch your Green Lantern show because I can't believe they're making a Green Lantern show, and that they have the audacity to say it's True Detective. Okay.
Well, it's just sometimes though, because like I tend not to read too much into those things sometimes because I know it's a marketing school tactic. They tell you, they're like, relate your thing to another thing that's popular. And it's like sometimes people will make the reach. It's like sometimes it's true, and sometimes it's just like there's a tiny kernel of it in there, but it's not like, oh, directly 1-to-1, but you want the byline of it's like this thing. So I'm waiting to see if it truly is True Detective-esque, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it won't be that True Detective about it, but yeah, I mean, like, you know, I hope it's good. That's all I can say about that. But yes, the idea of two Green Lanterns being on Earth, going like, oh man, this is a humdinger on a planet where Batman exists. Like, come on,
he's
like,
busy.
He's busy. He's just so busy. His power is multitasking and not having to go to the bathroom.
The Willmeister, thank you very much. Sal, I'm not familiar with the channel, but anyone who puts the tick next to Superman is cool with me. Question for both. Who portrayed those characters best, in your opinion? I'm a fan of the 90s animated series for the Tick. I love the Tick animated series. I think it's really underrated. I also actually don't mind the Patrick Warburton one that had like a few episodes, not too many. Like I really didn't. I love Batman and like stuff like that.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm in the same boat. Townsend Coleman is my Tick. I loved the cartoon show so much. It would surprise no one to find out that later on, the Venture Brothers co-creator Jackson Public was a writer / co-creator on the Tick cartoon show. So clearly, like, the Venture Brothers you could see it, like, from the character names to the like weird kind of off-kilter humor. Like you could see like, oh yeah, no, Venture Brothers is like a sequel to the Tick.
I love Venture Brothers too.
Such a great show. Unbelievable. I fell off, like, I don't know, in the like 6-year freaking time span between seasons. But where I'm like, I can't fall in love with your show and wait for you guys to make more. And then another season would come out and I'm like, did you finish it? Or they're like, no, it just keeps going. And I'm like, well then wait, call me when it's over.
Well, I think it is over now.
Yeah, the
but
movie ended it.
Because like now, I know it wasn't how they wanted to end it either. Because I watched the like commentary thing where they're like, we wanted to do a whole season and we have to compress it into this movie. So
okay, yeah. Well, you're not gonna get a show if you take 6 years between seasons of this already niche show on Adult Swim. Like, come on, guys, you need to strike while the iron's hot. But in any case, I love the Tick. I'm a big fan. I also watched. I was so sad. I was saddened by the Patrick Warburton show because it was so tonally different. Like it was funny, but it was also like, it was much more, like Seinfeld. Like it was more of like a kind of like subversive, kind of darker humor show. And I was like, no, I
Which
don't know
is
if I,
interesting because it aligned more with the comic in that way. Because
yes.
like the comic has a darker tone running through a lot of it. So
Yes. Yeah, the comic is much more is much less kid friendly. I mean, it's
yeah.
still a kid could read it and they're not going to have a problem, but it's also like yeah, I liked the cartoons version. It made the Tick much more pure-hearted and open. Like I like the idea of like the world being weird but Tick being pure. But as
Versus
my
him
Tick
being like an actual escaped mental patient.
yeah, yeah, I love the concept of the escape mental patient thing, but I also know that like that was one of those things where the censors were immediately like, you can't do that.
Yeah, I
Like
know.
he's not
No.
no. But then you get like him auditioning to become like the protector for the city at like
Yes.
the Reno
And then it just
convention.
makes him this really lovable, like genuine superhero in this world.
Yes, like all the other heroes are kind of cynical. Like they're
Mhm.
all there because like they're either, vain or they're egomaniacs, and Tick is the only like one who just is a superhero because he doesn't know any other life. And I'm
Mhm.
like, that's really cool. I love that a lot. And of course, the gay subtext between Tick and Arthur is like that's something they were like, we're gonna keep that forever. That's always gonna be a thing. The
Yes.
sequence where Tick and Arthur are in the apartment, like the joke, when Tick goes to Arthur's apartment and he assumes Arthur has like a secret crime lair, and
Yes.
he's like, "What does your sofa turn into?" It turns into a bed. It's in all versions of the show. It's in comic book, cartoon, Warburton show, and the Amazon show.
Mhm.
Edlund's like, this joke is so good it works on
It's like
every
it's
single
the one
interpretation.
thing it needs to be in all of them.
It isn't all of it. Is the unifying connector between every Tick interpretation is the what does your sofa turn into? It turns into a bed. Ha 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 ha! Nailed it. But yeah, I'm a big Tick fan. I don't know if you saw it, but like they did this like I think the Tick turned like 30 or something like that. Like the cartoon show, specifically
Mhm.
the cartoon show hit an anniversary, and Edlund and a few other creators on the show did like a live like event that they
Oh, no, I
streamed on
didn't see
Twitch.
it.
It's on YouTube as well, so you could
Mhm.
actually go back and check it out. But like they talk about the show and they like answer questions and they do like a giveaway and stuff. But like they talk about like the unfinished season that they didn't make and
Mhm.
all the ideas. And I'm like, oh, they're all so funny. Like every
Mhm.
idea they had, like the idea, and I'm not gonna turn this into a Tick show, but like there was one pitch that I love so much, and it was they fought a villain called the Bald Skull,
Mhm.
obviously Red Skull, but and his head is a skull, but he's also really self-conscious about being bald.
Mhm.
So he wears a toupee. And that concept is so funny. And and hearing them talk about it and remember it really fondly and talk about how they're like, you're gonna need like a 3 pay to cover up that ugly. And they went, no, it wasn't 3 pay. It was you're gonna need a whole face pay to cover up that ugly. And I'm like, that's even funnier than 3 pay. Like I was already laughing at 3 pay, but then you said face pay, and that's so much funnier because it's so much weirder to say. And you have Townsend Coleman, make him say it. But yeah, this is I'm sorry.
No,
That just made me
I
like,
love the Tick
oh
too, and it's like it's so rare to find somebody who also like knows what it is and like has engaged with it as well. So
dude,
it's like,
yeah.
yay.
I almost wore my Tick shirt to this show. Like that was what we because I was like, yeah, because I'm like, I need to put on something. Like I wasn't wearing anything all day, but yeah, it was Sunday. I didn't have to go anywhere. I don't have to go anywhere anyway, because I work on the internet, but I also didn't have to go anywhere today either.
Yeah, I know. I make myself go places because I'm like, otherwise I will not leave my home. So I need to like I need to go out.
Oh yeah, no, I need excuses to leave. I'll be like, who needs toilet paper? Ah,
Oh, do you have a favorite Superman? That was the second part of that
oh,
question.
like performance. I mean, it's got to be what's his name? Oh man, the animated series. Tim something. Tim Daly. Tim
I was gonna
Daly.
say
Yeah.
I was about to blank on the name too. I'm like, I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Like, oh, no.
Yeah, Tim Daly. He's a great Superman. I love that show so much. I loved Brandon Routh. Like I
Mhm,
mean, look, we all love Christopher Reeve. He was he was the
mhm.
first Superman I ever saw. Definitely loved him as Superman. But it's more like that's so the Christopher Reeve award goes to the actor Sal Picks for his favorite Superman. Like it's but I loved Routh as Superman. I thought he did such a good job. He really balanced the Clark
Mhm.
and Superman really well. I wish the movie wasn't so weird and sad. Because
Yeah.
he's so fun. Like like all of his quiet little moments, all of his Jimmy, like every interaction he has is great as Clark. and I wish he got to do anything. I love
It's
that
one of
moment
those
where, like,
things, like,
oh god.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I kind of feel that way about like Cavill's, where like I love the performance, but I don't necessarily fully enjoy the movies that they're happening in. So
Same. Yeah. Well, and I also feel like Cavill, like I think Cavill's Superman is really solid. I wish
mm.
he got to smile, but uh, unless he was like Cavill's Superman only smiles when he's better than everybody else. But like I wish he was like happy to be Superman. Like the scene
Mm.
where like all the people are touching him and he's like, ugh. I'm
Oh,
like
I know, like the
I'm
whole
like
like,
that's
does the world need a Superman scene?
yeah. I'm like, oh, that's my Superman right there. The most put upon God I've ever seen. But the scene where he's like at the end, I think of Man of Steel, where he becomes Clark Kent and he's like, "Hello, Lois," and he's like, "I make no attempt to hide who I am. I'm wearing these nerd glasses." It reminds me of an old SNL sketch where The Rock plays Clark Kent, and they put him in like a shirt 2 sizes too small, and they put a Superman suit on him, and then they put like a smaller Clark Kent outfit. And he's just the Rock in a Clark Kent outfit. And he's like, "Hello," and like the joke is that everyone knows he's Superman, and he's not fooling anybody. That
Mhm.
was Henry Cavill as Clark Kent to me. Like immediately, like, when I saw it, he's like, "Hi, I'm Clark Kent." He didn't even do a voice. Like, come on. But he's like, "Hello, I'm Clark Kent, and I'm too alpha to allow you to make you think I'm a nerd." And I'm like, all I can think of is The Rock being like, "What are you talking about, Lois?" And they're like, "Uh-oh, I hear Superman." Like, it's a good bit. Go look for it, folks. But anyway, I don't know. I don't like that one.
It's
I appreciate him, but no.
I actually he doesn't actually become Superman officially like in the show, but I'm a sucker for Smallville. I
Oh yeah.
love just that depiction so much. Just that whole show. I'm like everything that was going on there, even after the flip, because there's that huge online debate about like after season 6, it jumps the shark and becomes like something else. I'm like, I still liked it. Even when he like formed the Justice League before he was Superman, I'm like, I still enjoyed what that show was doing, you
Yeah,
know?
that show had so many weird hoops. Like they're just like no suit, no flying, no other guy, and I'm like, okay. I mean, the other thing that, like, as a kid, when that show like aired, and they were like, "This is the show," I was like, "Well, but it's set now. Like, by the time he becomes Superman, we won't need him because we'll have like robots to solve all our problems." Because I was really optimistic about the future back then.
You were waiting for your like flying car and hoverboard. You're like, it's
I was
coming.
like, I mean, we won't need Superman in 2001. I think the show dropped in like 2001. No. But yeah.
Psycho Jet Black, thank you very much. Thoughts on Spider-Man Chapter 1 by John? You're right. You're like, no.
These are not fair questions. You know what the answer is. It's not good.
Yeah, but
Have
they
you heard?
want to hear it.
Yeah, it sucks. It's not good. I don't like it. Like I'm a sucker for John Byrne art. Like I remember as a kid being like, what? Because as a kid, when you get comic books, it's either like you get them at the grocery store, someone gifts them to you, or you have a fist with some money in it to exchange it for a comic book, and so you have to like figure out how much that can be traded for. But occasionally, I'd get like a comic book, like a Fantastic Four, and I'm like, oh, good, it's that guy who draws the Fantastic Four awesomely. So like when they announced, oh man, John Byrne's going to do Spider-Man, I was like, great, finally. And then I picked it up, I'm like, the hell is this? and like, I tried to like square circles that no one asked for. Like, wait a minute, Norman Osborn and the Sandman both have weird cornrow hair. Maybe they're related. And I'm like, that is not the problem with this book. The problem with this book isn't that everything isn't interconnected enough. The problem with this book is that it's weird and the tone is off and you don't know who these characters are.
Like, it's funny because, like, I didn't read a lot of comics as a kid. So it's like, for me, I'm always coming to everything later from, like, a different perspective. So I'm just
Yeah.
like, sometimes I read some of this, I'm like, huh, I wonder what it would have been like to actually, like, encounter this when it was coming out. Because I'm like, for me, that's never what happened. So I'm like, I'm always after for everything. I'm, like, reading about stuff on forums and that kind of stuff. And, reading about the stuff you're supposed to like and all of that. That was, like, the hard thing. Was I think when I was encountering some of the stuff that I was supposed to like, and I was like, oh no, I don't like it.
But
like,
I don't. Yeah.
I'm like, what? Am I not a true nerd? Like, what's happening?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, it is not a good book. And then what's really fun about it is that like the audience just went, nope. Like it was like Marvel didn't go like, all right, we screwed up, we have to do an event where it changed, because they were like, chapter 1 is going to retcon the origin, like this is going to be the new origin from now on, like we're doing like a crisis kind of, like it's going to be just an official book that comes out that says that the stuff you read from Stan and Jack didn't happen, this is what happened. And the audience just went, no, we're not going to do that, like just like
flat rejection.
Like, I've never seen that kind of unanimity from the audience where they just went like, no, we're not going to do that. And creators being like, nope, we're not going to do that. Like they'd have characters like flashback to what happened, and they just disregard the burn book. And I was like, yeah, like that's, I've never seen a more overwhelming rejection of a concept where the boss comes in and goes, guess what? You know, we're going to do.
It never happened.
Yeah, we're going to do crazy t-shirt Fridays, and no one wore one. And they went, and they just quietly didn't have t-shirt Fridays after that. Like the book ended unceremoniously, and then we just got back to our normally scheduled programming.
I feel like a rejection like that is kind of like them not killing Nightwing, where everybody was just like, no. Like...
no, I don't care what you want. He's not going to die. And they're like, okay, fine. Then he has amnesia, and he's called Rick now. And they're like, okay. Like, well, the beauty of it was when they were like, his identity's out, and he's a secret agent. Buy that book. And everyone, okay. And then he was like, no, you're not supposed to like it.
And it's like everything after, it's like, we're still sticking with Nightwing. And then that thing came out in that special recently. I Know What You Did Last Crisis, where you got to write that story where like he killed him over and over and over again.
Yeah. I'm like, dude, maybe the problem is you. Like, yeah. Thankfully, it was in a book that like half the audience read.
I was like, I'm here for this weird book that's like adding stories to crises that only a few people asked for. I'm like, I read all these crises. I'm the audience for this book.
I'm ready. Yeah.
Psycho Jet Black, thank you very much. Is saying Marvel asks you to fix the Inhumans. How do you do it?
Right? I mean, how can you beat what Donny Cates did? He fixed them. He killed them. Like, they're dead. So we don't have to worry about it anymore. Now we can focus on the characters you want to read about.
Well, it's like, that's the thing. I'm like, I'm not a big Inhumans person. So I'm like, you're giving me a very hard task right now.
Well, and I actively don't like them. So it's like, I'm just like, oh, the most boring characters in the Marvel Universe. And then Feige's like, Eternals. And I went, I stand corrected. There is more boring team.
It's like, because I have some salt from the time when they were focusing on them instead of the Fantastic Four, because the Fantastic Four is they are my favorite team. So I'm just like, how dare you? You know,
it's a very respectable team to love. And the X-Men, where they were like, hey, listen.
When they were like, and now the hoops they're having to jump through to do things with Miss Marvel and stuff, I'm kind of laughing. I'm like, after the Terrigen Mist origin, and now you're having to be like, actually, it was an X gene the whole time.
Yeah, she's one of those both ways mutant Inhumans. And I'm like, okay, all right. No, I mean, there was a great Paul Jenkins book that like kind of pitched the idea, and people were like, this is great. And I remember people like desperately trying to get me to read anything about the Inhumans during the period when Marvel was actively suppressing the mutants. And they were like, this is pretty good. It's pretty good, actually. It's pretty, you might really like this. And I'm like, I don't like the Inhumans. And I especially don't like you insisting upon them. Like, I'm not interested in being like sold to, you know? And then, you know, they made a show that no one liked. I watched like 10 seconds of and was like, yeah.
I feel like everybody's forgotten that show.
Yeah.
It's like the Hellstrom show that exists that like everybody also like forgot about. Like these things.
Well, it was on Hulu. It's like, come on. But listen, if you ever want to watch the Inhumans show, take a second, go on YouTube, watch Mr. Sunday Movies. They did a Caravan of Garbage on it. It's the only way to watch it. It's it's great. Let them suffer for you. You don't need to watch like half the cast of Game of Thrones go on vacation to Hawaii. Like because that's basically what that is. It's like an Adam Sandler grift. They're like, how about?
But the people are having less fun.
Yeah, they are. No, the way less fun than Adam Sandler and his 4 best friends and an attractive actress who is not his wife. So I'm like, hey, how about Kate Beckinsale and I are married, and I'm a used car salesman in Hawaii, and I have 4 wacky and random characters that show up, and they'll be played by David Spade and Rob.
Frank Zanka, thank you very much. Moonstone is putting out a Green Hornet anthology by Timothy Zahn, Kev Anderson, and more. Where can I send a press release? My email is casuallycomics. If you ever need to send me any business things or anything like that, send it over there. That's where all of the business happens.
All the business.
Yes.
Wow, they just got like just get the Star Wars guys. Kevin J. Anderson and Timothy Zahn doing Green Hornet. That's a neat idea. All right, cool.
You know the answer to this, Victor. Victor Dark is saying, should Sony or Marvel adapt Marvel? You put a devil emoji and everything. You would know the answer is no.
You know the answer to that. It's I would say it's unreadable, but it is 100% unfilmable.
Yeah, it's I would say it's readable if you're a person who, for some reason, wants to like intellectually challenge themselves to suffer through to try and understand why it's happening. Then it's kind of like, and if you're looking into it like, this was like an experiment they were trying, but like, if you want to read it for fun, I would say like, no. And also like, I don't know why you would want to adapt it. So
no. So Victor Dark is just Bill Jemas, like his ghost account being like, they should make a Marvel movie. Like, they're never gonna do that.
You should make a Marvel movie about the making of Marvel. I'm like that
I would watch. Are you
that
kidding
would
me?
be really interesting. So,
yeah. A documentary about that would be pretty cool. I mean, like a documentary about like that 3-year window at Marvel, just watching like Marvel like pull itself out of bankruptcy and the decisions they made and how it's like you could start out being like, wow, Bill Jemas and Joe Quesada are geniuses, and then watch as it like gets to them and it turns into other things, and you're like, no, you're losing focus. You saved them. Stop doing what you're doing. That'd be really cool. I would watch the shit out of that. I think people would watch. I think people would watch that. I just, you gotta like, they gotta.
Like that's like adjacent to Marvel.
Yeah, but a Marvel movie? No. No one's gonna
don't do
it. Yeah.
The Willmeister, thank you very much. Brandon Routh got redemption when came back for CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths. It was awesome. He was awesome. Yeah, no, and he also got to do all the role on the like CW show, and like that was really fun. The Atom, yes. So I'm like, I'm remembering. I remember the Green Arrowverse.
Remember that Arrowverse that they killed? That they were all in on until they murdered it out of nowhere. Yeah, I loved him being Superman in Kingdom Come. The suit is amazing. Him being in it is really cool. No, that was really cool. I did not love the Arrowverse, but I did tune in when Cavill came back as Superman. I was like, all right, let's see.
It's like there were some fun moments to the Arrowverse. I'm like, the Arrowverse had its moments where it was like, yeah, this is a lot of fun.
Yeah, unquestionably. It pulled in an audience that like sold comic books. I'm like, yes, good for you. Like, that's great. So cool.
Psycho Jet Black, thank you very much. Crazy idea. Bring back Chris Evans as the Beyonder. Did you just see Deadpool and Wolverine? You're like, I need more Chris Evans doing other things in my life.
He is delightful. That's so fun because in Secret Wars 2, the Beyonder is Captain America. Like he approximates Captain America's body. Like he is like, I'll be Captain America, and then he like changes it.
Secret Wars 2 is one of those things that I'm always thinking about talking about and then don't. And I'm just like, why do I like? I'm like, there's so many moments in that are just like head scratchers. That'd be fun to talk about. But I'm like, this video would end up being like 2 hours long. And do I want to commit to something like that? It's so big.
No, when we did Secret Wars 2, it was like 2 hours. And by the way, it was a delight and it was so fun, but it was also nuts. And it also
there's so much to talk about. You don't want to leave anything out.
No. Yeah. Well, you could. I mean, he murders the entire New Mutants, and then they come back from a robot, like from a machine. And they're not even really themselves. Like it's really complicated. But also, the whole thing is just because Jim Shooter was mad. Like it's Jim Shooter's ego run amok. So yeah, just if you go at just know that that's kind of like what the core of it all is. Jim Shooter's just complete unfettered ego going completely berserk. It's about God.
No rails.
Like the book is about like God himself coming down to the superheroes, and it like when you know that like God is Jim Shooter, it's like, oh,
I know, it's like,
oh, damn it. Jim Shooter needs to have if he doesn't have a podcast, he should, because I would love to just hear Jim Shooter just talk about like
because like I always love reading old interviews and like stuff like that. I'm like, they're always so interesting.
They are, and the older they are, the better they are, because they don't like they know the audience is small, so they're like, I can say some really messed up stuff. Like that's like really out of tails out of school, but like they're not gonna 30 years later talk about this on a podcast in front of thousands of people.
It's like, who will even read this? It's like,
who will even read this? It's like, oh, Jim, you're still alive.
Benjamin Hall, thank you very much, is asking, should Smallville have become Metropolis after season 4? Well, he still lived in Smallville for a little bit, so I'm like, we couldn't have named it Metropolis as of yet. The Daily Planet or something.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. I mean, like, I didn't really watch the show much, so I can't speak. I wouldn't be like, man, that would have really saved the show. I was kind of like, oh, did it finally end? I can't believe it lasted this long.
I'm like, I was all in all the seasons, and now they do like him and Rosenbaum, they do like a podcast where like Talkville where they rewatch the show together, and I'm like, that's my jam. So it's so fun.
Yeah, no, man, yeah, Rosenbaum really, like, once he found the podcast, that was like,
yes,
he was like, this is what I do now.
And it's so good. It's so fun.
Yeah. No, yeah. I like him getting them in the audience. Like when he has them in the studio, it's way better.
Oh yeah, that because you just have that really fun energy. That's really fun.
Exactly.
Red Ghost 312, thank you very much. At Sal, will the new Avengers ever return?
I hope so. I love that team. That's my Avengers. Like that's I grew up reading the Avengers like sparingly and being like, oh look, it's the Unsellables. Look, it's Cersei from the Eternals and Captain America and White Vision. Like, oh, this is so boring. And they're gonna fight. I had a very specific villain in mind, and I can't remember. Space Phantom. Like, they're gonna fight somebody. I'm like, oh, come on. But yeah, no, New Avengers. I mean, if they were smart, they would. Every new iteration of the Avengers that Marvel like makes a book about gets further and further away from that concept. Like, do they not remember that like the Avengers was so deep in the weeds with themselves that they had to blow up the team and replace them with Wolverine and Spider-Man in order to get that book back on track? I mean, like, I understand the movie has none of those characters on it. Yeah. Like, and by the way, you are missing out not getting Mike Coulter back and just having Luke Cage be an essential part of the Marvel universe.
Yeah, he's great.
He is so great. And I'm like, oh man, like that Netflix period, I'm like, now we're hitting now Sony needs to collapse and then we can have a real universe going. And they were like, you could tell around like season 2 of Luke Cage, I'm like, this isn't even canon, is it? Like, this isn't like the fact that like they wouldn't even refer to, like, the show took place in Harlem and the Hulk movie, he messes up Harlem. There's no like F the Hulk sentiment in Harlem. Like, what the hell? So weird. This is I've been upset for 10 years. But Luke Cage, I'm like, put him in this universe. Like, I need Luke Cage to like walk up to Avengers Tower. Like, I need him to like react to this world and like bring some real groundedness to this. And it's like, now we're gonna make Hawkeye do that. I'm like,
like, it's not the same.
it's really not, especially not with that haircut. But yeah, no, New Avengers, bring it back. I'm ready any day. And don't call it Defenders or some weird crap. Just bring it back and make it cool. There are writers today who remember that book. Trust me, there were people who would want to, and there's an audience. It's called New Avengers, and it's got Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Captain America on it. They'll buy it.
No, for sure. And like, it's almost selling itself. So
yeah, right? Come on.
Psycho Jet Black, thank you very much. Thoughts on the Gotham show? Gordon and villains. The Gotham show is an experience.
I watched like a minute and a half, and I was like, oh no. And I just didn't. I didn't check in. I checked completely out, and I didn't watch it. And then I kept hearing things like, I'd hear like, oh, Joker. And then they're like, oh, it's not Joker. And I'm like, okay.
Well, like, how off the rails are you willing to go? Because it's like, if you like going off the rails, then this show was... Because some of the things with it, if you could embrace it for like, okay, we're just doing anything now, then it was really fun in that sense. Because it's like when they did like every version of the Joker at the same time, I was just like, okay. So,
right? Like, what?
Because it was like they were twins. Because it was like first he came playing the guy, and then he came back and he was like, oh, they were like brothers, Jerome and whoever, Valeska. And like, then you had like 2 different versions of I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, no, I remember I was doing shows with other folks who were actively watching it, and I was just like, I don't need to see it. I can just hear you guys talk about how nuts this show is and just have fun. I'm not gonna watch this show. And then it ended, and people were like, yeah, like every time I hear about a show being mercy killed, I'm like, I made the right decision. Never started to watch the show.
It's one of those things. I'm like, I had fun with it, but I have not sought it out except when I'm doing retrospectives on certain characters and they appeared in it. Because it's always really random. It's like, oh yeah, Nora Freeze. So like we got to go and watch those Gotham episodes now.
Yeah.
It's like that actually happens a decent amount. Like sometimes it'll happen with random things like, oh, gotta go watch those Batwoman episodes. Cause like this character actually appeared on Batwoman. So.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Man, I can't believe how many shows there are now that are canceled that had multi-season runs that did like all this stuff. When back in the day it was like, hey, remember when they made that Birds of Prey show for like half a season?
Yes.
That was all I had to go on.
I actually got to use a clip from it the other day because I was like,
Nice.
I need Birds of Prey Harley Quinn. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a decision. Cool.
It was actually really like that show made some interesting decisions, especially for the time. We're looking back and I'm like, wow, this show really tried to do some stuff.
Yeah. 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 No, they were like, we're doing something. And they had a lot more, you could feel they had like a little bit more freedom. They were like, yeah, go for it.
Mm-hmm. And it's like if people didn't respond to it or watch it, which makes me sad.
Nope.
But I'm like,
nope. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know whose fault that is.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how accessible it was because I know I just stumbled upon it randomly, like years later, like on the internet. Like, did you know there was a Birds of Prey TV? I'm like, no, I didn't. So let's go find that.
If I did, I would have seen it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, when it came out, I was just like, no. I watched the first the pilot and was like, is that Mark Hamill? Like that was cool. Wasn't literally him, but like he did the voice.
He did, yeah. Because they had the flashback, but like Batman's gone and like all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And they did. They were like, oh, we're gonna do the crippling too. And I'm like, what? Okay, this is a weird show, but also like neat. Yeah.
No, I had to I didn't have to. I said like I had to. I chose to rewatch the old like Trickster episodes from the Flash TV show lately because I'm like, it would be fun to do. I was gonna do a thing on Prank, like the original Prank from that show, and then I got distracted by other things, which often happens. But I'm like, there's a Prank video in the pipeline someday, maybe. So
yeah.
It's like, I don't know how planned you are with your episodes and stuff, but sometimes I have episodes that they just don't make it, you know?
Yeah. No. At this point, I'm like, I'm very far, like, I'm not very far removed. I'll be like 2 days before the show. And I'm like, all right, what are we doing? Like, and then I'll go, this week, I'm really going to hunker down. And then it just doesn't happen because I'm editing another show. And I'm like, got away from me again. Although this week, like there's an episode dropping this week that like I was like, I have time, and I like really jumped in. So I'm like happy with that. But
well, it's like this week is American Thanksgiving, so I know that schedules are going to be all kind of like messed up for people anyway. So I'm like this gives me some freedom to maneuver. People will be busy.
It's true. Yes. Yeah.
No, it's like there's a lot happening and a lot like out there to catch up with. Do you find that you have a lot of spare time to read comics for fun, or
I have fun reading the book, like thankfully, because books are I have the review show. And it's like new. I just read the books that I like want, and that's the fun part. Like I don't get to like read full on trade paperbacks. Like I don't get to read full stories like for fun recreationally like all the time, but if I need it or I have that hankering, I'll just work it into a show. Or I'll be like, I'll have already started something, like with Batman Superman World's Finest. Like I love that series. I've been reading it since issue 1. So like thankfully I don't have to like go back and catch up. I've been reading it week to week for the entire run of the series. So if I need to refresh, I'll reread it. But otherwise I'm pretty caught up. But yeah, I don't get to just sit and read like alone for fun. But or I'll work it into something, But occasionally I will find, like, it's very rare, but it does happen where I'll read a book and then I'll be like, we're not doing a show. I'm just going to read this. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen all the time. What about you? Do you find that it's like hard to just, read for fun, and or go like, this is not going to be, this is not for anything, this is for me.
Sometimes I feel a bit guilty about doing that, like about feeling like, oh, I'm just going to do this for me. But I make sure to, because I'm like, I don't ever want to lose the love. And I worry that if I were to get to a place where I didn't have those things that I just read, and I'm like, I'm just going to read this for whatever,
Yeah.
that I might lose some of the enjoyment of it. And I'm just like, I don't ever want to lose that passion and feeling for it. So there are a bunch of things that I just read. I'm like, I'm never going to talk about this. It's not like I'm making a vow, like, I'll never talk about this. It's like, maybe I will one day, but that's just not the plan.
Exactly.
Going in.
Yes, that's fair. Yeah, because I'll get questions where they're like, "Are you ever going to cover this?" And I'm like, "I mean, maybe." I don't want to say no, but if what you're essentially asking me is, will I read, if I haven't already read it, will I read it soon? And the answer is probably no. But maybe one day I'll get to it, and then I will. But yeah, and I will also give precedence to things I want to read. Like with Ultimate Spider-Man, I'm like, well, that's the first book I read immediately, like out of the gate. Or some ridiculous Tom King book, I'm like, well, I've got to read that first, But but otherwise, it's like, then I just go down the list of like from most exciting to like least excited.
Well, it's like sometimes there are things that I read and I wish I could find a way to work it into a show, but I'm like, there's not really a way to make this YouTube catchy or to convey how exciting it is, like across the screen. Like I'm reading Standstill right now by Lee Lowridge, and that book does some really cool things, but some of them are so comic format specific that I'm like, even if I were to like hold this up, like you won't get like, the full thing, because some of it is very specific to the medium itself. And that's one of the things I like about it. It does this really aggressively long paneling thing where it's like this really long splash page technique for some of the images. And I'm like, it's really fun to look at visually, but it's really only appealing in the physical format. It's not the best to read digitally. And I don't think showing it on the screen would convey the feeling of what it's like to read it. So I'm just like, oh, I can't put the feeling across through the screen,
Right. And without that, there's really no entry point. Like there's no point being like, there's a really good, otherwise it's just, hey, there's a really great book I like. I can't get really into it. Just buy it.
Yeah, because then you're entering into like source trust me, bro. It's like, listen, trust me, bro. Like,
and honestly, that's where like that is. I know that like it's toxic, and I hate it, but like that's where social media comes in, right? I will do that occasionally. I'm like, I read this thing, it's great, or hey, I love this thing, and I remember that I can't like find an entry point. Like I can't talk about like the Tick and for more than one whole episode 5 years ago. So just like, hey, they're doing this thing, go watch it. Please, because I love it. You'll see me there because I'll be watching it too. But otherwise, that's it. Like I can't find like a good way of selling it.
Every now and again, I do it anyway. I'm just like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm like, I need to talk about it. Like it's not leaving my brain. I'm just gonna talk about it anyway. I've going.
Definitely done that. Oh yeah. I'm guilty of that as well. There's I also will occasionally I will avoid things that I know that I'll do that with. Like I have this great reprinting of the first like run of J. Scott Campbell and Brandon Choi's Gen 13, and it's just such a weird. That book. No, but I grew up reading it, and I was like, I should talk about this again. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, first of all, no. Secondly, don't. And that's the end of it. But I know if I'll read it, I'll be like, I have so much to say about this. This will definitely be a show, and it's like, yeah, it would be a fun show to make.
But exactly, yeah. Like sometimes my husband will talk to me and he's like, "You're getting too niche. You're getting in too deep."
Yeah.
Like, thank you.
Right? And it's like I want to find like and that's another reason why we split channels, is because I'm like, well, now I can maybe put it over here, and it's like I can't do a whole back issues and put it over there. Like that's a big show. That's effort. That's like 7 hours of editing. I'm not gonna dump that over there to get like half the views. I have to pay the rent.
Psycho Jet Black is asking, should the next Wolverine actor be Canadian?
I don't care about like whether I don't need the actor to be the thing they're pretending to be.
No, me neither.
Right?
like if the next actor happens to be Canadian, like that's fine. But it's like you don't need to put on a casting call, like calling all Canadian Wolverines.
Right? Yeah. Like they didn't need the director of the Andrew Garfield movies to be named Webb. It just happened that way, and it was kind of fun that it happened that way. But they weren't interviewing people who had spider-based names. to direct the next Spider-Man movie. They just were like, no, it's just kind of a fun coincidence. Like, so yeah, if they get a Canadian, cool. But like Cal Dodd is Canadian. And so he brought a real authenticity to the voice of Wolverine in the original cartoon. And it's like, that's fun, but he didn't need to be. It's just, no, it was cheaper to hire only Canadians. They're all Canadian. Like Wolverine just happened to also work out, but the rest of them are Canadian too.
Yeah, I remember when I first looked them up, I was like, oh, they're all from here. Revolutionary Dragon, thank you very much. What's an unappreciated era of comics for y'all? For me, it is all new, all different. So what's an era that you appreciate that you don't feel that other people give as much love to?
I don't know. I mean, like, I got a lot of blind spots that like happened, because of like periods of my life where I was like, I don't have time for comics. But like, I do feel like, I mean, because there are people who romanticize the 90s, but there are also people who like make a living crapping on them. And I think like there was periods when like the 90s actually made some neat stuff, or at the very least fascinating stuff, like definitely book worthy or documentary worthy stuff. But I'm going to say like the early 2000s, like 2000 to like 2006. Like that's a period of comics where like a lot of neat stuff was coming out and a lot of good things, and comics itself was changing in a big way. And like, I think people just kind of like accepted it as like inevitable, but like work went into that. So that was really the period where like things were, and that it's not the only, but it's certainly a period that like people don't talk about. They're not like, oh man, remember this?
Yeah.
Like the DC swoosh logo era, which I hate. I hate that logo, but I also appreciate like what it represents. When I see it, I'm like, you guys are trying things right now. Like this logo.
Well, it's like for me, I'm going to answer an era that isn't one that's my favorite, but I think an unappreciated era in comics is the New 52.
Yeah.
And I think that because there's a lot of it that's a hot mess. And I will agree that I think a lot of the stuff that came out of it was like wonky and weird. And I don't agree with the decision to like just nerf all the legacy and all that stuff. And I will never enjoy that. But I think that there are a lot of people who you're starting to hear now coming up talking about how, hey, I got into it from this era and I really liked this version, and like, oh, I thought this book was super cool. And I think you're hearing more and more of that from like younger people who are now coming up and are able to articulate that like, hey, like this was something that I was really into. So and I feel like especially in some of the online discourse space, it almost came across like there was just like, no, nobody liked it. It was all like, things. So
yeah, well, because it sold great. Like, like it was a good business decision. But yeah,
so
I mean,
I think that I think there are some gems from that era that don't get discussed. I'm like, there are some really interesting things that they tried, and especially with some of the darker stuff like I, Vampire and like Justice League Dark and those kind of things that I think, actually deserve a bit more cred than they got at the time,
Yeah. Well, and also like creators that you love were working back then, like, and we're doing stuff that you might not have appreciated. Like, I mean, James Tynion the Fourth, like cut his teeth during that period. And it's like, yeah, did a lot of stuff that like people were just not reading or were dismissing out of hand online. And it's like, that's, there's a lot of neat stuff going on at that point. Occasionally, like I know I did, like, I certainly dismissed a lot of that out of hand. I was like, nope, to a lot of the New 52 stuff, particularly like when it came to Superman and, but like the Batman Superman book, clearly like work was being done. I wonder if it was as good as as it looked from, from the garbage can, where I'm like, I don't like you, but it also looks really good. And it looks like you're trying really neat stuff. I hope it's, well, I hope it ends soon. Right?
No, because like it came out of its growing pains, I think. But some of the mistakes early on were pretty bad. Like continuity wise stuff, you're like, oh no. Like,
well, there's just no planning. There was clearly no planning. They were just like, just let's do it. Let's just go. It's like, okay. But and it'll sell first, sell in like, to sell, but then it won't hold water.
Brandon Bradley is saying, I think Titans was a good DC show. At the end, I fell off of Titans. I fell off. I watched all of season 1, part of season 2, and then I fell off. So I have no idea how it ended.
Yeah, I don't either. I watched a little bit when I was being like, not when I was being encouraged by DC to watch it, like when they were gifting DC streaming memberships, and we were talking about them on a regular basis, and like the Netflix stuff, like the Netflix Marvel stuff, like normalized episodic watching. and commentary. But yeah, no, I didn't stick with that. I didn't stick with it immediately at all. I was like, this is not going to last.
It's like
Also,
for
I was
me,
like,
like I didn't hate it or anything. It just didn't
no,
grab me, you know?
no.
I was like, it was fine. There were some things I thought were interesting, but like on the whole, I was just like, it wasn't something that I was like, I need to come back and like watch every episode of this. So
No, I'll never watch the Titans again. Like I will never watch any more of that show. And I was like, the big thing for me, I was like, this show can't afford to exist. Like there's, I'm like, this is made for this app. There's no way that this show will last. And it lasted a lot. I mean, the fact that more shows came out, I'm like, what is happening? Like, did you guys find like an oil well somewhere? Because I don't know what was paying for that show, but yeah. But I did love the Swamp Thing show. Swamp Thing show was great.
The Swamp Thing show was really good. It actually was. I was like, this show is legit. This is the one that should have gotten more than like one season.
Yeah. Doom Patrol and Swamp Thing were good shows. Titans, I was like, I can dismiss this. I don't need to watch any more of this.
Doug is asking, what's your favorite obscure character? Oh, that's hard for me because a lot of the obscure characters I like are starting to get like more mainstream play. So I'm like, are they obscure anymore? And like people know about them. Like people know about Booster Gold now and stuff. But I don't know if he's obscure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's hard to tell. Like, I mean, especially you do a comic book show on the internet. You say a character like that's not obscure. I have every appearance of them. Like, but yeah, I don't know. I love a good sleepwalker. I don't know why. I just find it so funny. Like he's such a weird, funny character that I just really respond to. I don't like him necessarily, but I always think there's some potential for that character.
It's like I like Dead Man, but I don't think Dead Man's obscure. Does Dead Man count as obscure? Like I don't think so.
I think he does. I think he does, but also like he was the lead of Night Terrors, and it's like, but but did anybody know that? Like I love like the Max. The Max is one of my favorite characters from independent, from indie comics, but he had a show on MTV and like.
And then like do people remember that there was an MTV Max show? It's like do people remember there was a Spawn show? It's like
yeah, which I watched a lot of.
I watched
all that shit. Yeah. Hell yeah. No, I stayed up late and I was like, oh no, I don't get
I watched all the weird like MTV, like Liquid TV stuff, like Eon Flux, all those things. It was like, yes, this is where it's at.
Same. Oh yeah, no. I found I was on TikTok actually the other day and like there was someone uploaded like a high def transfer of the weird blend of like Ralph Bakshi animation meets like stop motion puppetry that was the intro to MTV's Oddities, which had the Max and the Head. And I was like, what? Like once I heard that music, I was like, oh, it's 1994.
It's like that's one of the cool things about TikTok is the way that it's able to quickly repurpose, even quicker than YouTube, like all of those older things and just put it back out there. And then people find it and then they think it's cool. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. People are discovering like all this stuff again. I saw some people were just sharing the animation the other day from Eon Flux where it's the kiss scene, but the kiss is from the inside of the mouth and you're seeing like the tongues and stuff.
Yeah, man, that show is friggin' bizarre. And I watched a lot of it.
I loved that show. And looking back, I was like, I was way too young to be watching it so much.
Big time.
Fluxes I did.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I was watching it because I was like, I know I'm not supposed to be watching the show. Like, this is not for me. But I'm watching it anyway. But also, like, it's funny because I was watching it and I remember there was another show around the same time. And then I found out apparently, like, similar studio, if not the same studio, like, worked on it, or like the same showrunner, the Phantom 2040.
No, I didn't see that one.
Oh, no one did. It's okay. But it was a really weird, but it was the Phantom from like, King's Feature Syndicate or whatever. But like set in the year 2040. So it was like Blade Runner and Aeon Flux meets the Phantom. And it looked like Aeon Flux, like the same character designs, like the same weird kind of like odd proportioned humans and stuff. And I was like, what is this? And I remember being like, this is like Aeon Flux, but like less edgy. But yeah, that's for every time I see and then I remember, I think it predates the Phantom starring Billy Zane. And I remember being like just seeing a trailer for the movie and I'm like, that ain't my Phantom. My Phantom's a weird twisted Aeon Flux meets Blade Runner show.
I'm definitely gonna have to look for that now.
Yeah, check out Phantom 2040. It's friggin' weird. It's a weird show. And like I don't know who it was for, but it was not for children. Like that was a show that was like on at like 9 a.m. on like UPN, and there was no way The
Well,
kids were
it's like
like, yeah,
there was a whole era of people who were just green lighting things. So like it's animated and animation is for kids. And I'm just
yep,
like, there are a bunch of things here that are not for kids. A lot of the anime they brought over at first, where I'm just like, like the night town stuff. I'm like, no, this isn't. We're not supposed to be watching Night City. There we go. I'm not
yeah,
supposed to be
yeah,
watching this.
right? Like, no, yeah, God, that's true.
Psycho Jet Black is asking, what's the best life advice you got from comics?
I mean, with great power comes great responsibility. No, I'm kidding. Like, what does that mean? But yeah, I mean, like, it's not necessarily like one comic, but when you have, I mean, when it comes to indie comics, you get like a real insight into like mostly the creator, like the creator's like concepts and interpretations of life, and so that helps you. I think it certainly helped me. Like when I was reading indie books when I was a kid, and or adult comics, I don't know what you'd call that, like Strangers in Paradise and stuff like that, like just books that were like clearly geared for not me, but it gave me a real insight into like people and relationships and expectations and reality that were very different from like the sanitized version that was made for children. But the sanitized CCA approved comic books that I was reading at the time certainly helped, like with this kind of like very basic kind of black and white morality that gave me kind of like a North Star to follow. But there were ebbs and they were like the Punisher, no, Spider-Man better, but seeing the nuance and like navigating that was really helpful. But there was no like book that I read where I'm like, this is truth, capital T.
Well, it's like for me, because I can say like I don't tend to absorb like advice and stuff from media. That's just not the type of person that I am. Like all that stuff I got from like my parents and those kind of things. It's like there are things that I value in terms of how comics are created, and like I can appreciate when something is trying to impart, some kind of lesson, and then like intellectually parse through it and see whether I feel it's landing or not, or what it's saying. But like as for actually getting life advice from them, not personally. Like that's just not how I absorb them. But I know some people have gotten some really valuable, advice from them. It's like everybody's different. So
absolutely. Yeah, no, it's true.
Sagama is asking, do you like Hickman's direction for the new Ultimate Universe? Are you vibing with the new Ultimate Universe?
Hell yeah. Oh yeah. I'm in. I love it.
No, I've been enjoying it. It's one of those things where it's like I don't talk about it on the channel all the time, but I'm like, if I talked about everything I read all the time, like it would just be like a 24-hour stream. It would be like,
Yeah. No, it's true. I'm a fan. I dig it. And I like how they're all kind of different. Like they just released this like cover that is an homage to the Jim Lee X-Men #1 cover, where it's like and I'm like, this couldn't be further from the truth. All these characters being in one place, like it does not work
because they're kind of doing their own like things.
Like they had the audacity to put the Ultimate X-Men like,
oh no, come on,
like bumping into I'm like, no, like I mean they are, but like we're not there yet. Like don't get ahead of yourself. Like there's no way. Like Black Panther does not jive with this. It's good, but like, they're all good.
Yeah, like I love Ultimate X-Men, but it's very much its own, type thing. And like that's part of what I like about it, is that it's just so kind of out there.
Yeah. No one's telling Pete Momoko like, oh, by the way, make sure to get Iron Lad in there. Like they're not, no, she's just doing what she wants, and that's all for the better. It's all to make that a good book. But it also allows you, I mean, the fact that it's also like so region specific, it's like, great. That means that like it could be happening over there, and the Ultimates are doing whatever the hell they're doing, and Spider-Man is just hanging out within like a 3-block radius of his house. Like, yeah, that's fine. It allows them to be, to it allows for plausible deniability. Like, yeah, no, they're all in the same universe.
Do you find that you're enjoying like the Ultimate Universe more than the emerging Absolute Universe? Do you find you're enjoying them in different ways, or it's just like
totally different ways, right? Like, I mean, like they're so different, but also, but they work in that way where autonomy is so important. Like letting Absolute Batman feel like Batman, Absolute Wonder Woman does not feel like Absolute Batman, nor does it necessarily even fit. But like it can if you let it. Or if you find a solution, it's like actually kind of the early days of the MCU kind of figured that out.
Yes,
and then forgot.
before,
yeah, like where Thor is a Thor movie, Captain America's a
Mhm.
Captain America movie, Iron Man's an Iron Man movie, and then they
Yeah.
were like, let's get someone else to make the Avengers movie that bridges all those things together, and then they're like, and then make them all like that.
Mhm.
But so I my hope is that with Absolute and with the Ultimate Universe, like they either, I mean, Hickman will probably just do it, but like with Absolute at least, like get someone else to, like, if there's an Absolute Justice League ever,
Mhm.
get someone else to figure out how to put that all together
Mhm.
and merge them in some way.
Mhm.
But let them all kind of be their own autonomous concept until
And
then.
at least let them be that for a while too.
Yeah,
Let it grow, let it build,
totally.
Psycho Jet Black is asking thoughts on the Shaquille O'Neal movie Steel. I haven't seen Steel in forever. It's
Me
been a
too.
long time since I've seen Steel.
Yeah, it's watchable. It's
Mhm.
better than Morbius.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm sure I could watch it again. I'm like, I don't know if I would, but I'm like, I'm sure I could if I sat down
Yeah.
and was like, I'm taking time out of my life to like rewatch.
Yeah,
Steel.
I'd need to monetize it. Like we'd have to do a thing for it, but like only because there are other movies I want to see that I wouldn't be
Mhm.
seeing instead.
Yeah,
But
exactly. It's
yeah,
taking the
but
place.
if you want to see Steel, it's worth seeing because it's kind of fun. It's super stupid. I mean, like, of
Mhm.
course, but like, it's also definitely the work. Like, if you were ever curious, as I recall, it's watchable.
Yes, but it's like, don't quote us because it's been a while. It's like I could watch it again and be like, oh wow,
Yeah,
no, this
but
isn't what I remember.
right, but I didn't like see it in theaters. Somebody mentioned Meteor Man. That's not Steel. That's a very different movie. I did see Meteor Man in theaters, and that was marketed differently. I thought that was a superhero movie, and it is, but I was the only white guy in the theater. Like that was the movie's not about that. It's good. It's actually really as far as I recall. I'm like, this is fun, but like yeah, it was a real learning experience for me. I was like, oh, this is like, I'm learning a lot as a child, like as a really little kid. Like my dad was just like, superhero movie, let's go. Oh, it's Luther Vandross. I haven't seen him in a while.
Arda Goski is giving you some love, saying, I love
thank
Sal, the writer of the ongoing Terminator series. You're doing the backups.
I'm doing the backup. Not the writer of the ongoing Terminator series. I am writing a backup story. And by the way, when I say writing, I wrote a 10-page backup, which has been broken up 2 pages at a time per issue. So if you get all 5 issues of Terminator, 1 through 5, you'll get all 10 pages of my backup story. That's the way it works. I don't make the rules. That's how I got my name on the book. So thank you for checking it out. Yeah, issue 3 FOC is passed, but I'm sure you could find a copy at your local comic book store when it drops next month. But in the meantime, first 2 issues are out, which means the first 4 pages are out for me. Thank you for the opportunity to plug my book.
How did you enjoy the writing process?
Wonderful. I love writing. I used to write a lot. I've self-published like 7 or 8 books, and to much acclaim, as you can imagine. But I love the writing process. I love creating. I love writing, and I love telling stories. And it was a great opportunity that I like. I pinch myself over having been given that opportunity to do it, and I really had to like get back into that mode because I spent a lot of time like making books and then selling books and then not getting anywhere with them and just kind of being like, all right, well, it's a really expensive process to make comics for yourself. And so I kind of like, well, if you don't draw and like I can't. And so I kind of like, not I shook myself out of it, but like when I get an idea and I write, like when I make books, I need to see it. Like when I have a script, I'm like, well, next, like, let's do the next thing. So like I kind of shook myself out of the writing process a while. So it was fun to get back into it. Once I did, like, I mean, it was a process of, I didn't just write a script. Like I wrote like pitches, and that was fun because it's a completely different skill set. It's like I wrote like 3 or 4 pitches and then I sent those out, and refining those was fun. And then writing a script based on that pitch and then having that entire script thrown away and then doing it all over again. I was like, this is fun. Like, this is, I'm not like in a delusional way. I'm like, this is fun. I really like being abused. No, I had a great time, and I wrote like 2 scripts, like 2 full scripts for 10-page stories that I'm like, these are cool, and I would be proud to put my name on them. And so it was great. Just a fantastic experience. And then of course, like getting paired up with Colin Craker, and it wasn't like paired up. It wasn't like Colin and I were, hashing out ideas. It was, the script was done. They gave it to Colin drew. But even then, like seeing Colin, like I immediately like behind everybody's back, like contacted Colin. I'm like, hey, you're the artist in the book. Let's work together. If you have any thoughts or you want me to change it, we're already at the infancy. I can change anything. He was like, oh, I already thumbed out all 10 pages. I'm like, are you serious? You just got the script like today. And so that was amazing to see. Like I saw the whole book or the whole 10 pages, like the whole story at once. And I'm like, wow, like look at all being done. And look at this pro. Sadly, he does work digitally exclusive. So I can't buy any pages of his. But you know, I can buy them the same as anybody watching the show. We're at your local comic book store for only like $3.99. I don't remember how much. It's a reasonable price, trust me. But that was a really fun experience.
Yes, that's coming out through Dynamite. So if you want to check that out, that's where you can go to look for that. Have you been bitten by the bug though? Or are you gonna like now have lots of
Did I send like 6 pitches to like various publishers for different things? Absolutely. Oh yeah. Oh, the day after the first issue dropped, I'm like, hey, like everybody. The only one actually, it's funny. We talked about the Tick. The only one I didn't pitch was I didn't contact Ben Edlund, but I really want to. But we're mutuals on Twitter right now, and I want to keep that copacetic. Like I don't want to be like, hey, can I write a Tick story?
It's like I gotta send you a thing.
I send you like my pitch for my Tick story because it's really cool and I think it'd be awesome. And I kind of want to work with like with Chris McCullough on it. And I know the artist and he'd be great. Like it would be really cool. But I also don't want to be like, you're following me because you want to pitch me a Tick book. Like, come on. I don't want to do that. But one day I will ruin that relationship. But by asking, but everybody else like DC, Marvel, a couple other people, I was like, yes, here, send them. And one of them, I sent a pitch to Dark Horse over a thing, and I got a no within an hour. Which I respect the hell out of. I'm like, thank you for your very.
It's nice
quick...
to hear. No, honestly, it's great to hear back. So you're not just in the nebulous. Like, so did anybody even read it? Or,
yeah, yeah, no, and the no, and it was justified. It was a completely reasonable answer, and it wasn't because I suck. Like it was just like the creative force behind the book that you were pitching only does his own work. He doesn't want like other people. And I'm like, that's completely valid, and I appreciate it. You know. Thank you for your quick and hasty feedback. I appreciate it. But yeah, but I have the bug. I mean, like again, the problem is I've had the bug before, and it's resulted in like a bunch of cool books that no one's ever freaking read that are on my desk. But I do have one book that was a webcomic, and people could have read it for free, but they didn't for the last like 8 years. So I pulled the website and we printed it, and we're working on it right now. Like once we get the cover done, there is a cover, but we're going to have it redone, and once it's redone, then we'll go to Kickstarter and like print it.
Oh, cool.
And sell that. Cause that's a book. I'm like, this is still pretty good. And my wife made she's a designer and she made this whole, like she made the book, like she put it together and did like interior design and all that stuff. And it's ready to, it's like ready to print. Like it is, I got the comp and it's so good. And I'm like, this is, like I was more excited about seeing it put together than I was about seeing my book again. I was like, wow, this is so, look at the perfect binding, you know? It was really good. So it's all good to go. It just needs to be, we need the cover and then we need the campaign to print it, and then we'll see what happens with that. But that's one idea. You know, but but once I get the bug, then I'll start having to make more books, which is so expensive. Yeah.
I think that's the thing that like people don't tell you about writing, which is that it's like once you start, it's like, you know, like you can't have just one, like the Lay's thing. It's like, you're like, once you start,
once you pop, you can't stop.
It's like once the ideas start flowing, and if you're a type of person who thinks that way, then it's just they just come. And then it's like then you have to kind of go through the process of like some of them like get killed or don't make it. And like that's just a whole like different, you know, kind of
absolutely.
thing.
Yeah.
And so like part of the process is also learning to let it go. You know, it's like that
big time.
Which is an interesting thing. You know?
I did a whole podcast with Toy Galaxy once about like ideas that we were sure were hits that didn't, like that just weren't, and the learning experience behind like failure or what is perceived failure. You know, like I had a cartoon show that was pitched and picked up and then canceled that I turned into a comic book that went absolutely nowhere. And it was like, and it was just, that represents like almost 10 years of just being like, I think this idea is so good, people will want it. And just being like told unequivocally, no, you know, and
Mhm.
I'm like, but that's such an important thing to know, is like, this is not going to work. And being
Yeah.
able to like not, you know, to break that delusion, you know, being like, because, you know, not to throw anyone under the bus, and I won't name anybody, but like I've
Mhm.
seen books, like I've seen, you know, people who have made one, who have one idea, and they're like, this is the one. And I'm like, it's been
Mhm.
20 years. And
Mhm.
you've had lots of opportunities to get it in front of people who could make it happen, and it hasn't. And like
Mhm.
sometimes that's like a real, like, you know, rags to riches story of like, no one believed in me and then I did it.
I know, but actually it was brilliant, but sometimes it's actually not as good as you
But
think it
most of
is.
the time it's not, you know, or it's too brilliant. The world won't get it, you know. I've never made one of those things, but I can imagine, you know, but I'm willing to give that an option for some folk who have been like, I've been doing this one thing for 20 years and I pay thousands of dollars to go places and pitch things, and it's never, and no one, and it's just the right person hasn't seen it yet. And I'm like, but a lot of people have seen it, you know, and they didn't want it. It's
Mhm.
really important to like self-censor and understand, like, you know, when
Yeah,
to
and
stop,
also
when
just
to stop.
learning to not let no crush you, you
Yeah,
know?
right.
Like, and also learning how much of things isn't personal.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that's hard when, like, you are creative and attached to something. It's just, like, it feels personal at first, and it's like, "Oh, but it's actually not, though. It's really actually
Well, because
impassionate
it's
for."
so personal, because it's you creating. It's like
Yeah.
you told me that I'm no good, and it's like, all right, Marty. Uh,
Oh. The infamous Mike Manhattan is saying, "Thoughts on Marvel's Wizard of Oz comics?" Do
I
you mean
didn't
the
read
S
them.
do you mean the Scotty Young ones? Like,
Oh yeah, yeah. He's got to mean those, not the
because
Marvel DC
I have
crossover.
because, like, I have those actually, and I think they're cute. Like, my daughter really likes them. So
Yeah, I was like, this is not for me. But I did love the covers,
Mhm.
and I was like, this is really cool that Marvel's doing this. Like, good for you.
No, it's like they're fun and, like, they're very readable and enjoyable from that way.
Mm-hmm.
Psycho Jet Black is asking, "Will we ever get Terminator on a ship in the ocean?"
Thank you. Yes. We might be getting a Terminator on a ship if you look at the solicits for the next couple of issues, but none of mine. This is a joke that we've been having. It's a running joke where I pitched an idea. I was really jiving with Tom King on a podcast once,
Mhm.
and we were just riffing. We were talking about a Predator is such a versatile concept, and it could be anything. And I wanted it to be like an anthology show where you make the show, 45-minute vignettes, you know. And he was like, yeah, and he was like, yes, yes, this is such a good idea. I'm like, you know, Predator versus a cowboy, Predator versus a samurai warrior. He's like, yes. I'm like, Predator on a pirate ship, and he went, no. And I just hard stop. No, it wouldn't work on a pirate ship. Immediately, I was like, we were in sync. And then the second I mentioned a pirate ship, he was like, absolutely
It
not.
was over.
It was over. And I'm like, how is it? I'm like, what do you mean? And the more I thought about it, the more cool the idea became. Well, you know, and it wasn't an idea, it's a visual, because like that's what it is. We're talking like 40 minutes of a Predator story. The Predator arrives, you know, in the middle of two guns. It's just the Quick and the Dead, but a Predator shows up. Like I'm not talking brain surgery. I'm not talking Shakespeare here. You know, just a Predator lands in the middle of the ocean. He gets picked up by pirates. He fights the captain. The pirate ship goes down in flames. That's the story. Who cares? He's like, no, but he needs to hunt. The Predator has to hunt on the ship. The ship is too small. He won't have enough room. There won't be enough time. He kill everybody in 10 seconds. And I'm like, why are you resisting this idea so much? And I mean, like, this is Eisner Award winning, soon to be, like, you know, television showrunner / movie director. You know, like, not director. I'm not. No, Tom King is not directing any movies. I'm just
Wait,
saying,
don't quote Sal.
maybe one day he will, but I'm just making a reference. But but yeah, he's pitching all these ideas, you know, but he was like, no. And we released that episode, and the audience is like, so Predator on a pirate ship is a hard no from Tom King, but Sal, I believe in you. And it just spiraled out of control. It became this whole like running joke where like every time that people would see Tom King, they'd mention Predators on pirate ships, until inevitably a good friend of mine had Gavin Guidry, of all artists, who actually did a segment of the Predator versus Wolverine crossover. And of course, he worked on Birds of Prey and other books, Superman 78. And but my friend had Gavin, he commissioned him an image of, it was just a full image of a pirate fighting the Predator on a
Mhm.
pirate ship. And it's
Oh,
dope
wow.
looking. And he gave it to me at New York Comic Con. I brought it immediately to Tom King. I was like, I need you to sign this and acknowledge this is cool looking. And he was like, all right, it is pretty dope looking, I have to admit. So like, the pirate ship thing. And by the way, I don't even like pirates. Like, I think they're neat, but like, I'm not a big pirate guy. Again, it was
just the reaction of the
yeah, people don't like, people like really glommed onto it, but I'm like, no, I don't I don't need to tell my pirate story. That being said, then of course, only like a few weeks ago did they announce that they're making a Predator anthology animated series. And one of the examples they used was a pirate. And I'm like, there's no way you didn't take that idea from me. And so, I mean, like, we're getting our pirate ship fight. And I'm like, so it's not only is it a cool idea, but like, Disney agrees and it's going to happen. So,
now all you need is like an action figure. And now it's going to be like 100% in the world.
I'm so jealous. Like, Joshua Williamson wrote this great Predator story. It was part of a crossover event called like Fire and Stone, but he invented his own Predator, Ahab, I think he called him. And NECA made that figure. And I'm like, man, if I could invent a Predator or do something cool with a Terminator, like, NECA made action figures of the horrendous, really ridiculously fun and stupid Frank Miller, Walt Simonson Terminator RoboCop crossover where there are Terminator dogs. Yeah, there's where there's a half RoboCop, half Terminator from the book, and also a a Terminator dog. And they made that figure, and I was like, we did that episode, much to the chagrin of the audience at large who watched it. But we talked about that on Back Issues, and we were just like, this is amazing. And then what's it called? One day I found out they made the toy, and I bought it immediately, and now it's out of print. But I'm like, I have it. This is the Predator. This is the Terminator dog. If I could have some invention in these universes where they can make a toy of mine, then I could just quit. And I can retire.
Hi, Chris is saying, absolute Wacky Man. Who is your artist for such a book? So I did a video on Wacky Man recently because why not obscure Aquaman villains? It was that or the Unthing, and the Wacky Man one in my brain. I was like, Dan Mora, let's shoot for the stars. Like,
If it's Dan Mora, he'll do it. Like, he will nail it.
Let's make the best absolute Wacky Man book out there.
Yeah, you kidding me? He would. I mean, come on. Yeah.
In all seriousness, I would love to see an absolute punchline or something. I'm like, I'm like the number one like punchline fangirl. So I'm just like, give me all the punchline.
They can make it work. I mean, like the absolute universe, there's the problem is they have to be very different, and it's like if punchline is already working,
Well, that's my thing. I'm like the punchline pitches that just live in my brain. And I'm like that nobody needs, but I'm just like, I would write the heck out of punchline.
Yeah. I'll be the one. Like when you need it. When it's,
the Thanos, like, fine, I'll do it myself.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? Man.
Psycho Jet Black says the Predator holding a skull, reciting Hamlet.
Yeah. That's, I mean, like that. We're so close to it, right? I mean, like they did that in Last Action Hero when Arnold does Hamlet. I mean, it's just you're 1 degree away from it already. The Predator doing Hamlet, by the way, he would have to have heard Hamlet and he'd be repeating someone else's version of it, or it would be in clicks. Yeah, you haven't heard Hamlet until you've heard it in the original Yachtja.
And it's like, oh, you nearly just opened up the Star Trek box there. I'm like, oh no, if I start talking about Star Trek, I'll never stop. So.
No, we'd have to do another episode about that. We can't, because I'll get one. Yeah, no, we've already been going for 2.5 hours. We don't have another 2.5 hours to go to talk about Star Trek.
I need to like unbox some of the Star Trek stuff I got though. I'm like, that's going to be my entry into like TikTok and shorts. I'll unbox things. I see all those unboxing channels because I'm just like, my kids love a good unboxing. So I'm just like, unboxing's where it's at.
Oh no, that is absolutely their jam. Children love to see. I mean, yeah, right. Like it's so primal. Like as
and that's like what's in the box, but like but wholesome, not 7. What's in the box?
No, it's not heads. It's fun. Yeah. Yeah, they need to know, especially if that box has like an indication of something they enjoy. It's like if it's a toy or.
Oh gosh, well, because I was watching like the Skibbity Toilet mystery box, which is now, so that's
good. That's great. That's great. Propelling humanity forward is the Skibbity Toilet blind box.
Oh, Well, it's like I heard some kids yelling the other day, like, "Don't be a skibbity Ohio Rizzler," and I understood it, and I was like, "Oh dear."
Oh
Like,
dear. Yeah. I mean, context is everything, you know? Like, I mean,
it's like I felt like the Captain America. I'm like, I understood that reference.
yeah,
Like,
right.
DanV900, thank you very much, is saying, Philip Kennedy Johnson said he wants to do Absolute Aquaman, so Wacky Man could be closer than you think. Predator
Mm.
Badlands as a film with the Predator as the protagonist is interesting, plus the animated anthology.
Yes, I'm down. Yes. You kidding me? Also, PKJ is absolute Aquaman. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a smart
I'm
idea.
I'm down for absolute anything. I'm just glad Aquaman's coming back, and like I missed Aquaman, so like
Yeah.
I like Aquaman, so I'm down for any and all Aquaman. And I think, and I know they flirted with the Black Label one with the Andromeda thing. Mom, you could make a really cool horror Aquaman thing. And I know
Oh
that
yeah.
this one wanted to a little bit. You can see that in some of the trench scenes in that, and
Yes.
like you can tell like that there was a really cool dark thing in there.
Yeah. 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 I think yeah, Andromeda was like, if this sells, we're gonna really go for it. Oh.
Yeah. Psycho Jet Black is saying, imagine absolute Batman who laughs or Dr. Manhattan.
No. Don't. Nobody wants that.
Well, you know, there's probably at least someone somewhere who wants that. Isn't like canonically the Batman who laughs trapped in Fortnite? Is that like where that ended up? Like, I
I think
think
that's
that's what happened.
yeah. Yeah, he's in Fortnite. Great. Yeah, well they'll fix that. I'm sure that they don't remember that. But yeah. No.
Well,
I
like
do
now
not need
they'll
to see that.
remember, and like somebody will remember.
Yeah. And I do not need Absolute Watchmen either. We're good.
Oh gosh, no, now you've willed that into
No.
existence. You've put it out
Yeah. Right? Absolute comedian.
there.
He's just bigger.
Absolute Ozymandias.
Yeah, sweet. He's more relatable.
That's just the pitch. They're all
Yeah.
more related.
Yeah. What if they weren't so like mean and sad?
That's the opposite. They're all really nice and just genuinely
Yeah,
heroic.
they're like the golden era of suit. Like they're the JSA.
Oh. Well,
Actually,
we've been
yeah.
I was just gonna
No,
say we've been going for a bit and it's coming up to like midnight and all that stuff. But
true.
I wanted to thank you for coming on and chatting with me. This was a really great time. And like anytime you want to like collab or do anything, like I'm down. So
Absolutely. No, yeah, definitely. This was a great time. I want to thank you for having me on this show and just shooting the breeze. This has been a lot of
yeah,
fun.
no,
And
it
I want to
was
thank your
great.
audience for letting me hang out and being
Yeah.
cool.
And if you haven't checked out Sal already, you should. And all of his links and everything are down below. So you should do that. So have a great day, night, whatever it is, time for all of you. And thanks so much for coming and hanging out. And we'll see all of you again soon. Bye bye.